You've been chasing peace like it's somewhere out there in a calmer mind, in fewer problems, in a better version of you. But what if the chase is the very thing keeping you restless? They told you you'll find peace when everything's done, when you've healed, when nothing's wrong. But the truth? That moment never comes. And deep down, you know it. Because no matter how much you check off the list, no matter how quiet the room is, your thoughts keep running. Regrets from the past, fears of the future, what ifs, what next? Why can't I just sleep? Here's the secret Buddhist monks have known for thousands of years. Peace doesn't come when your life is perfect. It comes when your mind stops clinging. Clinging to control, clinging to identity, clinging to thoughts that were never yours to carry. And the practice that sets you free. It's not force, not escape, it's understanding. A quiet seeing that emptiness isn't scary, it's freedom. That the space between your thoughts isn't a void, it's a doorway. Tonight, we're going to walk through that door together. You'll hear teachings that dissolve the need to grasp, to fix, to hold on. And slowly, your mind will loosen its grip. Your breath will soften, the spinning will stop, and you'll finally feel it. That quiet stillness underneath it all, the peace that was never gone, just buried under noise. This isn't just another bedtime story. This is the beginning of something real. A gentle letting go, a return to now, to the you that's been waiting underneath it all. Are you ready? Let's begin. So many people search for peace in loud places, in accomplishments, in other people, in endless scrolling late at night, hoping to feel something different. But the present moment doesn't shout, it whispers. And most of us are too tense, too clenched, too far from ourselves to hear it. Right now, there's tension in your face you don't even know you're holding, around your jaw, between your eyebrows, behind your eyes. A tightness that doesn't just stay in your skin, it echoes through your entire nervous system. You've learned to wear this tension like armor, as if relaxing means you're weak, as if softening is giving up. But the Buddha taught something different. He smiled, not to pretend, not to impress, but because a soft face is a doorway to a soft mind. That smile wasn't a performance, it was a practice. A mirror of metta, loving kindness. That subtle, peaceful curve was a message not just to others, but to himself. A reminder, this moment is safe, this breath is enough, and compassion isn't something you give only to the world. It starts in your body. Let's begin. Soften the space around your eyes. Let your forehead melt, like warm wax loosening the tight places behind your thoughts. Release your jaw, that silent grip that tries to hold control even while you sleep. Let it go, let it hang, let it feel strange for a moment. You're not doing it wrong. You're finally doing it consciously. This simple act, relaxing your face, sends a message to your entire body. It's okay to rest. You are not in danger. You don't need to prove anything. You're not under attack. For many, tension becomes so familiar, it feels like part of who they are. Like the only way to survive is to brace for what's next. But awareness is how you interrupt that pattern. Facial awareness, in particular, is where you begin, because it's visible, because it's where you express emotion before you even speak, because your face holds more than expressions, it holds history. Think about how the face reacts to emotion. It tightens in fear, it flattens in despair, it stiffens in anger, but in presence, in pure, gentle awareness, it softens. That's not weakness. That's your body remembering it doesn't have to fight the moment anymore. A calm face brings your mind back into alignment with now, because the mind listens to the body more than you think. When the face is tight, the breath follows, shallow, sharp. But when the face softens, the breath deepens, as if your lungs just realized they had permission to open. And with that breath, a deeper awareness arrives. Not from outside, from within. This is the foundation of Buddhist facial awareness. It's not about smiling to appear spiritual. It's about becoming aware of how the face reflects your inner state and how it shapes it too. It's about letting go of unconscious tension over and over without judgment, just noticing, softening, returning. There is a hidden wisdom in the eyes too. When they're darting, chasing, or avoiding, it's a mirror of the mind avoiding itself. But when the gaze settles gently, without needing to grab anything, something profound happens. The world comes to you. You don't have to reach anymore. You can just see. Softening the eyes is not just a bodily gesture, it's a spiritual posture. In Buddhist monasteries, students are taught to rest the gaze slightly downward, unfocused but present, as they meditate. Not because there's something magical in that direction, but because it lowers the mental urgency to react. It brings you closer to quiet. Facial awareness is often overlooked in meditation teachings, but it is one of the most direct ways to return to the present moment. Not through thinking, through sensing. When your face is soft, metta becomes more than an idea. It becomes embodied. That kindness toward others starts as kindness toward yourself, toward your skin, your breath, your muscles. You begin to relate to yourself not as a problem to fix, but as a presence to care for, gently, patiently, fully. And this soft attention ripples outward. People notice when your face carries softness. They feel it. It's like being in the presence of someone who isn't trying to win or escape or control the conversation. They're just here, and their calm becomes contagious. The practice of softening the face is not only for quiet rooms. It's especially useful in the moments when you feel triggered, irritated, or overwhelmed. Before you react, soften. Before you raise your voice, soften. Before you write that message, soften. This isn't about pretending to be peaceful. It's about inviting your nervous system to catch up with your higher wisdom. Try it when you're stuck in traffic. Try it in a conversation where you feel unheard. Try it when you're judging yourself. Soften the face, then speak. You'll notice your words change not just in tone, but in depth. Because when your face softens, your heart opens. And when your heart opens, even hard truths come out as offerings, not attacks. Science now echoes what ancient Buddhists already knew. The vagus nerve, a key player in our rest and digest system, responds to facial expressions. A relaxed face helps regulate stress. It shifts you from survival mode to presence mode, and presence is where your power lives. This is not a one-time fix. It's a gentle habit, a secret return path. You won't always notice when the tension creeps back in. That's okay. The point is not to be permanently relaxed. The point is to be aware. And in awareness, you have choice. Each time you notice your face has tensed again, you get to begin again. That's the practice. No shame, no frustration, just beginning again. Even as you listen now, notice, have you tightened anything without realizing it? Your mouth, your brow, your neck, breathe into those spaces. Let them melt. You don't need to hold so much. This softness doesn't take away your strength. It's where your real strength begins. Because it takes courage to be present without a mask. It takes trust to let go of armor. And it takes love to sit with what you feel without trying to escape it. You'll also notice something surprising. As you soften your face, your thoughts change. The mind mirrors the body. A harsh expression fuels harsh thinking, but a gentle expression invites gentler thoughts. That inner critic, it starts to quiet. Not because you silenced it, but because it doesn't feel as welcome anymore. Softening the face also helps you sleep. Many people don't realize how much physical tension blocks deep rest. The muscles around the eyes and mouth often stay activated long after the day is over, as if they're still holding conversations that ended hours ago. When you soften your face before bed, you send a message to your whole being. The day is done. There's nothing left to solve. You are safe now. Let your cheeks fall away from effort. Let your tongue rest gently in your mouth. Let gravity hold you. You don't need to carry this moment. You just need to be in it. Some nights your thoughts will try to resist this peace. They'll say things like, "But what about tomorrow?" Or, "I didn't do enough," or, "I need to figure it out." Don't fight those thoughts. Don't chase them either. Just soften the face and return to the breath. Let the tension fade before the story fades. This is how the Buddha smiled, not as a performance, but as a presence. He wasn't ignoring suffering. He was offering a different relationship to it. One of kindness, of acceptance, of space. Your soft face can hold your sorrow. Your soft face can hold your joy. You don't need to pick one. You don't need to push anything away. You just need to soften and stay. Because this moment doesn't need you to be perfect. It just needs you to show up gently, fully, honestly. So much of spiritual practice is about remembering what you already know. And your body knows more than you think. Your face knows how to smile without effort. Your breath knows how to soothe. Your awareness knows how to rest. When you're present, truly present, your face reflects that truth, not with forced peace, but with relaxed aliveness, with an openness that says, "I don't have to hold it all anymore." And in that openness, something beautiful unfolds. You stop trying to be somewhere else. You stop rushing the now. You stop believing peace is somewhere far away. Because it's right here, in the space between your brows, in the corners of your lips, in the breath that moves in and out without being told. Softening the face is one of the simplest things you can do, and it might just be the most powerful. Because it brings you back not to some ideal version of you, but to the you that's always been here underneath the tension. The kind one, the quiet one, the present one. And as you drift towards sleep, you don't have to try to remember all of this. Your body remembers for you. Your breath carries it. Your soft face reflects it. Right now, your only job is to let go of the holding. Let go of the chasing. Let go of the fixing. Soften and stay. When the body softens, the breath deepens. When the breath deepens, the mind slows down. And when the mind slows down, a door opens. A quiet, subtle opening, not into more thoughts, but into the one who sees them, the one who has been here all along, behind the breath, beneath the emotions, before the story even began. In the stillness that follows relaxation, something becomes clear. You're not your tension, you're not your plans, you're not even your thoughts. You're the presence that notices them, the space in which they rise and fall. Thoughts come and go, sensations shift, emotions move like weather. But something watches it all, without needing to change it. That something is awareness. This awareness isn't flashy. It doesn't demand attention. That's why most people miss it. They're too busy being the thinker, the doer, the one who tries to hold it all together. But when you stop trying to fix or manage the moment, you may notice something strange. You're still here, even without effort, even without control. This is reflexive awareness. Not awareness of a thing, not the breath, not the body, not the sounds, but awareness of awareness itself. The recognition that you are the knowing, not just the known. The observer, not only what's being observed. This is not about thinking, "I am aware." It's not a concept, it's a shift, a clear seeing that requires no thought to sustain it. Most people live identified with what passes through awareness, their thoughts, their feelings, their roles. They become the sadness, the anxiety, the craving. They forget that all of it is being watched, and if it's being watched, It can't be what you are, because the one watching is always separate from what it sees. This doesn't mean disconnection. It doesn't mean cold distance. It means spaciousness. It means you are not trapped inside your thoughts. You are not stuck in your story. You are the sky, not the storm. And the more you turn toward that silent observer, the more you rest in something stable, something free, something that does not shake when the world around you does. You don't need to force this shift. In fact, you can't. You can only notice. You can only stop chasing the next moment long enough to realize this one is already full. Not with content, but with clarity. With a kind of gentle alertness that doesn't need to move. The practice is simple, but not easy, because the mind is used to objects. It wants to focus on something, the breath, a mantra, a sound. But awareness of awareness means turning attention back onto itself, not with effort, but with interest, with curiosity. What is it that knows you're breathing? What is it that sees this thought appear and fade? Don't try to answer it. Just look. Just rest as that noticing. It's not about disappearing or zoning out. It's about being so fully present that there's nothing left to chase. The need to define, label, and judge loses power. What's left is just being. This is the heart of many advanced Buddhist teachings. In Dzogchen and Mahamudra traditions, they speak of the view, the natural, effortless awareness that underlies all experience. It's not something you create, it's something you uncover, like wiping steam off a mirror that's always been clear underneath. But this is not just for monks or mystics. It's for you, right now, lying in bed, with your phone glowing and your mind halfway between sleep and thought. This awareness is already here. You've never not had it, you just rarely look at it directly. So, how do you stay with it? First, relax the need to do it perfectly. That's just another thought. Instead, get interested in the one who sees the thought. Don't judge the noise. Let it come. Let it pass. But instead of following each one, rest as the stillness they move through. When a thought arises, notice that something sees it. Stay with that noticing. Let the thought fade, and stay with the clarity that remained. Do this over and over, not as a task, but as a gentle returning, like coming back home after a long day of pretending to be everything else. There's no need to manipulate your experience. Awareness doesn't need silence to notice. It doesn't need special feelings. It doesn't need your mood to be calm. In fact, it shines most clearly when the mind is loud, because then the contrast becomes obvious. I am not this storm. I am the one watching the clouds. You'll find over time that even the sense of being a separate watcher begins to dissolve, because awareness has no shape, no edge. It is not someone looking at something. It is the field in which all appearances come and go. That includes the body, that includes the self. That includes even the sense of being a spiritual person trying to awaken. The moment you try to own awareness, you slip back into the dream. But the moment you rest, as it no grasping, no naming, something opens. A deep ease arises, a silence that isn't empty, but alive. This is not about escaping the world. It's about seeing clearly. When you live from this reflexive awareness, you respond instead of react. You see others not as characters in your story, but as expressions of the same presence. Compassion flows naturally, judgment softens, because you know they, too, are struggling with storms they think they are. Awareness is not emotionless, it feels everything, but it doesn't get pulled under, it doesn't lose itself. It holds everything gently, with space, with patience, with love. You may notice that in this space, nothing really needs fixing. The present moment reveals itself as whole. The compulsive urge to chase, fix, escape it quiets. Because when you are deeply here, not just in body but in being, there's nothing missing. Even the question, "Am I doing it right?" becomes irrelevant, because the one asking the question is seen, and once it's seen, it's no longer you. It's just another thought, arising and falling, like a wave on the surface of a still lake. This practice transforms more than meditation. It changes how you live, how you listen, how you love, because when you rest in awareness, you don't need others to complete you. You don't need the moment to be different. You meet life as it is, not with resistance, but with presence. Even conflict feels different. You hear the angry words, but you don't take them in. You feel the rise of emotion, but you don't drown in it. You can feel sadness, but you're not broken by it. Because there is space, because there is seeing, and in that seeing there is freedom. Let yourself be guided by this awareness tonight. As thoughts rise, don't chase them. As memories flicker, don't resist them. As sensations shift, just watch. Don't try to change what you see. Let it all be as it is. The only thing that matters is the seeing itself. And when you lose it, when you get caught in a thought or swept into a daydream, that's okay. Come back, not by force, but by recognizing that awareness was never gone. Only your attention wandered. And now it returns. Even as you drift toward sleep, awareness doesn't end. It becomes subtler. It remains as the background of dreaming, of rest, of deep silence. You don't need to hold on to it. You just need to let go of everything else. Tonight, let this be your practice. Not watching the breath, not focusing on the body, but gently, wordlessly, watching the watcher. Resting in the clear, open presence that is always here, even when the mind is loud, even when the world is messy, even when everything feels uncertain. This is your refuge, not because it hides you, but because it frees you, not because it makes the world go away, but because it shows you the truth behind it. You are not the storm, you are the sky. You are not the thought, you are the space it appears in. You are not the waves, you are the depth. There's nothing to figure out, nothing to hold, just this. Stay here, in this simplicity, in this openness. Let awareness watch everything rise and pass, and know that none of it touches what you truly are. Just rest, just be. Even in silence, awareness remains. It doesn't fade when thoughts do. It doesn't depend on the breath or the body. It simply is, always present, always still. But if awareness is so steady, so infinite, why do we feel like we're constantly running out of time? The pressure isn't coming from the moment, it's coming from the mind's idea of time. There's this ticking behind your thoughts, this countdown that says, "You're late, you should have done more, you're running out." This isn't presence, this is stress disguised as structure. And Buddhist teachings point directly to this illusion that time, as we hold it in our minds, is not as real as we think. Shunyata, often translated as emptiness, doesn't mean that nothing exists. It means that things don't exist in the fixed, separate way we believe, and time is one of the biggest illusions we live under. It seems solid, but it's not. It seems real, but it's an idea. And once you see this, stress begins to lose its grip. Right now, you're not experiencing time. You're experiencing this moment, just this. Not the past, not the future, not the years or the deadlines, only this unfolding experience. The breath, the feeling of your body on the bed, the sound of this voice. That's all there ever is. What we call time is just the mind stitching together memories and projections and calling it real. This might sound strange at first, but look closely. Can you find tomorrow anywhere in your direct experience? Can you touch the past, except through thought? When you stop clinging to those thoughts, when you settle into presence, what remains? Nothing but now, and that now is timeless. The problem is that we've built our lives around a fabricated structure, schedules, clocks, deadlines. We've made time the master, and we've become its servants. Even in moments of rest, part of us is calculating. How long until I fall asleep? How many hours left? How much time did I waste today? But the now doesn't ask those questions. It doesn't count minutes. It doesn't measure worth in productivity. It simply unfolds fresh, spacious, unrepeatable. When you let go of your grip on time, you return to this unfolding. You start to live rather than track. This doesn't mean you stop being responsible or forget appointments. It means you stop identifying with the anxious voice that treats every moment like a race. You do what needs doing, but without the inner panic. Without that subtle voice that says, "You're behind." There is no behind in presence. There is only what's here. Shunyata also reveals that time has no fixed essence. Just like a wave can't exist on its own, it needs the ocean. Time doesn't exist apart from awareness. It's a mental construct, a map, not the territory. And when you mistake the map for reality, you suffer. You feel like life is slipping through your fingers. But the truth is, you're always in it. You can't fall behind life. You are life. Stress about time comes from comparison. You compare this moment to another, real or imagined, and decide whether it's enough. You compare your pace to others. You compare your age to some imagined timeline. You compare your progress to a goal you barely remember setting. All of this lives in thought. None of it is happening in the present. The mind holds on to past events as if they can be changed. It anticipates future outcomes as if they can be controlled. But in doing this, it leaves the only place where peace exists right now. Every worry about time is a story. Every regret, every rush, every not yet or too late, it's just mental noise. When you look directly, you'll see there's nothing there. This recognition brings freedom. Not freedom to do anything you want, but freedom from the fear that you're not doing enough. You don't have to outrun the clock. You just have to return to the moment that doesn't move. This moment has no age, no deadline, no pressure. It's whole on its own. It doesn't ask you to hurry. It welcomes you as you are. In Buddhism, practitioners are encouraged to sit and observe their thoughts. Not to get rid of them, but to see through them, to see their emptiness. When you sit and watch the mind talk about time, deadlines, expectations, you start to see how repetitive it is, how reactive, how unnecessary. You begin to realize the past isn't alive. It's a pattern in your mind. The future isn't waiting. It's a projection. Neither is holding you. Only your belief in them is. When that belief relaxes, so do you. Your body starts to follow. The muscles unclench. The breath deepens. The nervous system rebalances. Because time-based stress isn't just mental, it lives in your physiology. When the mind says, "not enough," the body braces. It prepares for failure. But when the mind sees there is no time but now, the body rests. This is why many meditation traditions use simple anchoring phrases like "just this" or "nowhere to go, nothing to do." Not to make you lazy, but to loosen the grip of false urgency. That urgency is a habit, not truth. And, like all habits, it can be replaced. Every time you notice yourself checking the clock, pause. Take one conscious breath. Ask yourself, is there an emergency right now? Almost always, the answer is no. What feels urgent is usually just a thought spinning in circles. This is not about ignoring reality, it's about responding with clarity. You still show up, you still take care of your life, but you do it from stillness, not strain. And this stillness is what time can never touch. It's deeper than your schedule, it's older than your plans. It's the still point that was here before the calendar was invented. You can sense it in the space between thoughts. You can feel it in the pause after a breath. You can find it in those moments when you forget what time it is, not because you're distracted, but because you're fully here. Those moments are glimpses of truth. They're reminders that time is a tool, not a cage. That presence isn't found in minutes or hours, it's found in awareness, in attention, in being. Even the body doesn't experience time the way the mind does. It's always in now. Hunger, warmth, tension, all sensations happen in the present. It's only the mind that tells a story of before and after. The body just is. When you start living more from the body, from presence, you begin to feel timeless. Not in the sense that you stop aging, but in the sense that you stop suffering under the weight of age, the pressure of goals, the panic of passing years. You begin to live with more depth and less rush, more wonder and less expectation, more being and less becoming. This isn't a philosophy, it's a practice. It begins with awareness, with watching how often the mind uses time to create suffering. I should be farther along. It's too late for me. What if I don't make it in time? These thoughts are not reality. They're habits, learned patterns. You can learn new ones. You can train the mind to rest in now. Start small. Notice the tension in your body when you're rushing. Ask yourself what you're rushing toward. Ask if peace is available now, without finishing anything. It always is. Let your attention return to this breath. Not the one before it, not the next one, just this. This breath has no clock, no goal. It simply is. In the same way, your being has no clock, no goal. You don't need to become anything. You are already here. The world may ask for your time, but it cannot take your presence unless you give it away. Choose to stay here, not in the story of how late you are, not in the pressure to catch up, but in the fullness of now. Now is not a second on a clock. Now is awareness without distraction, consciousness without division. It is whole, complete, untouched by the mind's games. When you rest in this now, the weight of time lifts. You feel spacious, not because anything changed, but because you stopped measuring, you stopped resisting. You let this moment be enough. And it is. It always was. When the weight of time falls away, what's left is space open, silent, unmeasured. In that space, peace is natural. But peace doesn't mean life stops. The phone rings, someone knocks. A loud voice cuts through the quiet. Suddenly, presence feels broken. The moment is no longer calm. Your body tightens, frustration builds. And the mind says, this wasn't supposed to happen. But the moment is never broken, only your expectation of it is. Interruptions aren't problems, they're invitations. Unexpected sounds, delays, disruptions. These are not mistakes in your practice, they are the practice. In Buddhism, even the most ordinary moment is sacred if met with awareness, and nowhere is this more true than in interruptions. Distraction is not a failure, it's a doorway. Every time you're pulled from presence, there's a chance to come back. The bell you didn't ask for might be the bell you needed. The car horn, the text message, the unexpected noise in the hallway. These can all be reminders to return if you meet them with mindfulness. This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of fighting the world to stay calm, you let the world become your teacher. The interruption becomes a bell of awakening, not because it's pleasant, but because it's real. And mindfulness isn't about clinging to quiet, it's about showing up fully, even when it's loud. The reason interruptions feel irritating is because they collide with control. You had a plan for the moment, a rhythm, and the disruption throws that rhythm off. But the truth is, nothing was ever fully under control. The more you cling to a perfect moment, the more fragile your peace becomes. True presence includes disruption. It doesn't push it away. It doesn't wait for the noise to stop. It learns to meet the unexpected with interest, with patience, and even with gratitude. You can start to train this awareness by paying attention to your first reaction. When the interruption happens, when the message comes, when the person speaks, when the sound breaks the silence, what is your body doing? Does your chest tighten? Does your breath hold? Do you judge? Do you tense? The key is to notice. Not to change it, not yet. Just to notice what's automatic. Because what's automatic is often hidden, and once you see it, you have the freedom to choose something different. With time, you can learn to pause before reacting. The moment you hear the disruption, use it as a cue. Let it be a bell. Breathe. Drop the thought that says, "This shouldn't be happening." Return to your body, to your senses, to what is actually here rather than what was supposed to be. Sometimes the interruption will bring up irritation. Other times it might bring sadness, fear, or restlessness. Don't label the response as wrong. Let it be part of your experience. The interruption reveals what was already within you. The reaction is not caused by the sound, it is caused by the mind's resistance to change. Mindfulness invites you to let go of that resistance. Each time you do, you build resilience. You become less fragile, not because nothing affects you, but because you stop needing the world to stay still for you to feel peace. You learn to ride the wave instead of fight the tide. Interruptions also expose habits of mind, the rush to judge, the compulsion to fix, the fear of being thrown off. These are not flaws, they are teachings. Every reaction shows you something about how your mind operates. This is valuable, not because it feels good, but because it shows you where freedom is possible. Sometimes the interruption isn't external, it's internal. A sudden thought, a surge of emotion, a flash of memory. These too are part of the practice. Instead of pushing them away, meet them like you would a sound, with openness, with curiosity. Let them rise, let them fall, watch them pass. The more you practice this, the less power these moments hold. You start to realize that you don't need perfect silence to be at peace. You don't need the world to slow down. You only need to stop fighting what is. In Zen practice, everything is considered a bell, a child crying, a door slamming, even the sound of someone coughing during meditation. All of it is treated as a call to return. Not to escape, but to return to this exact moment as it is. You can bring this attitude into your life wherever you are. When someone interrupts you mid-sentence, pause, feel your feet, feel your breath. Respond, not from urgency, but from presence. When a plan gets delayed, notice the tension, then soften. Let the delay become your teacher. This is not passive, this is powerful. It's not giving up, it's waking up, because presence that only exists in controlled conditions is not real presence. But presence that meets chaos with calm, that is real practice. It's also deeply human, because life is unpredictable, people are unpredictable. You will be interrupted, things will go off course. The power is in how you meet those moments. Start to play with this during your day. When your phone rings at the wrong time, take one breath before answering. When someone cuts you off in traffic, notice the surge, then let it pass before reacting. When your mind starts to wander, smile gently and return. Over time, these little pauses add up. They rewire your nervous system. They create space where reactivity used to live. And in that space, peace becomes possible, not because the world is quiet, but because your awareness is deep. Interruptions also show you how attached you are to your preferences. You like things a certain way. You want your timing, your space, your rhythm. There's nothing wrong with that. But when those preferences become conditions for happiness, you suffer. Mindfulness breaks those conditions. It shows you that joy doesn't have to wait. That peace can be found even in the middle of a mess. That clarity can arise even when everything is noisy. The key is attention. When you give your full attention to what's happening, even if it's not what you wanted, you transform the moment. You stop labeling it as good or bad. You start to see it for what it is, just another part of being alive. That's what makes mindfulness powerful. Not that it protects you from life's messiness, but that it teaches you how to stay awake in the middle of it. Disruptions aren't enemies, they're mirrors. They show you how steady or shaky your practice is. They show you what you're still clinging to. And that's a gift, because you can't let go of what you don't see. Every time something throws you off, ask, what was I holding on to? What expectation got shattered? What part of me wanted control? Then breathe, release, begin again. This is how practice deepens, not in stillness, but in motion, not in silence, but in noise, not in perfection, but in what interrupts it. Even now, as you listen, you may hear background sounds. The world doesn't pause for your practice, and it doesn't need to. Awareness isn't fragile. It can hold everything, the sounds, the movement, the unexpected, without collapsing. This is what freedom feels like. Not distance from the world, but openness to it. Not insulation, but integration. You no longer avoid life. You meet it fully. You meet it kindly. You meet it with curiosity, even when it interrupts your plans. And you begin to see every moment is a doorway. Even the ones you didn't choose, even the ones you wanted to avoid. All of them lead you back to now, to breath, to awareness. Let each interruption become a friend, a call, a reminder. You don't need silence to be still. You don't need control to be calm. You don't need perfection to be present. You only need to be here, with this, as it is. Let that be enough. Let that be the practice. Not everything that awakens you comes with noise. Some things return you to presence with no sound at all. After learning to meet the loud and the unexpected with awareness, you begin to notice something quieter, something always present. It was there before the text, before the knock, before the mind reacted. It is the one thing that never left you, even as your thoughts scattered the breath. The breath doesn't demand attention. It doesn't compete. It waits. It moves without needing you to manage it. And yet, when you give it attention, something changes. You start to feel grounded, not in thought, not in ideas, but in something real, something here. The breath doesn't take you away from life. It brings you into it. This is why the breath is often called the middle path. It isn't just a tool to relax. It's not just for calming nerves. It's a thread that weaves through every layer of your being. It joins your physical body to your mind. It brings attention out of the spinning stories and into sensation. It doesn't belong to the past or future. It only lives in the now. When you're caught in distraction, the breath brings you back. When you're overwhelmed, it slows the rush. When your mind races toward unfinished plans or unresolved memories, the breath reminds you that you are not your timeline. You are not your speed. You are not your noise. The breath becomes a bridge, not just between thoughts and stillness, but between worlds, between the part of you that lives in memory and the part that only exists now. Between your human concerns and your deeper presence, it connects all opposites, movement and stillness, doing and being, effort and letting go. In Buddhist teachings, breath is more than air. It is life expressing itself. In Pali, the word for breath, anapana, refers not just to the in and out, but to the awareness of breathing. This awareness isn't about controlling, it's about joining, about allowing your attention to meet what is already happening, gently, without interference. This subtle meeting creates balance, not just mental balance, but a deeper sense of alignment. Because when the breath is steady, the mind is less scattered, the body relaxes. There's a return not to ideas or labels, but to presence, not to escape life, but to meet it fully. Most people take thousands of breaths each day without noticing a single one, and in that unconsciousness, they live disconnected from their bodies, from their feelings, from their experience. But breath awareness brings you back to your humanity. It reminds you that you are alive now, not in a concept, but in a felt reality. Breathing can also guide you through difficulty. When you're sad, the breath shortens. When you're afraid, it tightens. When you're angry, it holds. These changes happen quickly, without asking. But once you notice, you can work with them. You can return your breath to its natural rhythm, and in doing so, you return your system to balance. This isn't about ignoring emotion. It's about creating space for emotion without being taken over by it. A deep breath doesn't erase pain, but it softens the grip of it. It doesn't remove anxiety, but it reminds you that you don't have to be swept away by it. Breath is the first step in self-regulation. It is presence made physical. Every breath is also new. No two are the same. This means each one is a new chance, a fresh beginning. You don't need to wait for the next day, or the next retreat, or the next goal. The next breath is the return. Right here, right now. The more you train your attention to rest in the breath, the more you begin to feel its subtle intelligence. You'll start to notice how the breath responds to your attention, how it lengthens naturally when you're calm, how it shortens when you're distracted. You start to develop a relationship with it, not as a function, but as a teacher. In many contemplative traditions, the breath is not just used as a tool, it is treated as sacred. It is seen as the first expression of life and the last thing to leave at death. Everything in between is connected by breath. It doesn't belong to any one religion. It belongs to life itself. Using the breath as a bridge also helps integrate the body into awareness. It's easy to get stuck in the head, analyzing, interpreting, spinning. But when you return to the breath, you return to the body, to the chest rising, the air moving through the nose, the belly expanding and falling. These sensations don't require thinking. They bring you out of concept and into contact. You stop theorizing about presence and start feeling it. The more you feel, the more grounded you become, not just in meditation, but in daily life. Breath also creates rhythm. A steady breath creates steady presence. An unsteady breath reveals where tension lives. You don't have to judge the breath. You just need to notice it. This noticing, without controlling, begins to relax the entire system. You may also find that your breath reveals things you weren't conscious of. A tight inhale might show you where you're holding fear. A shallow exhale might reveal a reluctance to let go. The breath becomes a mirror, reflecting back the inner state. And like any good mirror, it doesn't lie. When you develop intimacy with your breath, it becomes a refuge, not something you run to only in panic, but something you rest in throughout the day. You check in, you return. It becomes a home you carry with you. You begin to respond to life differently. When something difficult happens, your first move is not reactivity. It's a breath. That pause, that moment of feeling the air move, is enough to change the direction of your reaction. You become less automatic, more intentional. This changes how you speak, how you listen, how you think. Instead of rushing to fill silence, you breathe through it. Instead of reacting from habit, you create space. In that space, awareness flows in, wisdom flows in. The breath also connects you to others. When you're in conversation, both of you are breathing. There's a shared rhythm, a shared humanity. In mindful communication, you breathe as you listen. You breathe as you speak. This slows everything down. It makes the exchange more honest, more grounded. Even conflict feels different when approached from the breath. Instead of matching someone's tension, you return to your breath. You root yourself. You speak from the calm, not the chaos. This is not weakness. It's power rooted in presence. Breath is also key to emotional processing. Instead of suppressing feelings, you breathe into them. You let them arise, be seen, and pass. The breath gives them space. It makes you spacious enough to hold what comes. This holding is not detachment, it's deep presence. It's meeting your life without running. The breath also builds concentration. It gives the mind something steady to rest on. When thoughts pull you away, you return to the breath. You learn not to judge the wandering, but to appreciate the returning. Each return strengthens mindfulness. Over time, the breath becomes more than a focus point. It becomes a reminder of your choice. You can always return. You can always pause. You can always meet this moment again, with less urgency and more care. The breath is also kind. It doesn't punish. It doesn't argue. It gives and gives again. Even when you forget it, it continues. It supports you through every experience. And when you finally return to it, it welcomes you with no conditions. Breathing also reminds you of impermanence. Each inhale arises and fades. Each exhale leaves and is gone. Clinging to the breath is impossible, just like clinging to any moment in life. The breath teaches you to meet, to feel, to release. This is the rhythm of presence, of life, of awareness. You begin to live with more sensitivity. You notice subtle shifts. You respond to needs before they become emergencies. You feel more alive, not because your life changed, but because your attention did. The breath doesn't fix problems, but it prepares you to meet them with clarity, with steadiness, with a presence that isn't shaken by change. Every breath you notice is a return to this moment, not the idea of now, but the felt, lived, sensory now. It links your human body with something bigger, with awareness itself, with the mystery of being, with that quiet knowing that this right now is enough. Stay with the breath. Let it guide you. Let it show you what it means to be here. Not reaching, not escaping, not waiting. Just here, with what is, with the breath that brought you home. The breath softens the edges of thought. It opens the space between reaction and response. It creates stillness inside movement. And in that stillness, something else becomes clear. There's another voice in the room. Not the voice of the world, not the sound of breath, but a whisper in your own mind that never seems to rest. The inner critic. Even in silence, this voice speaks. It tells you you're not doing enough. It questions your worth. It compares, doubts, judges. Sometimes it pretends to be helpful. Sometimes it tries to protect you from failure or embarrassment. But at its core, it's fear wearing the mask of logic. And for many, this voice has become so normal, so constant, they barely notice it anymore. It blends in as if it were truth. But it's not. Buddhism teaches us that how we speak matters, not just to others, but to ourselves. Right speech is one of the Eightfold Path's ethical principles. Often taught as a guide to external communication, truthfulness, kindness, and purpose, it also applies deeply to how we relate to our own inner world. Because the way you talk to yourself shapes how you live. It shapes your mood, your choices, your capacity to be present. When your inner voice is harsh, the body tenses. The nervous system enters defense. The breath becomes shallow. Your energy gets drained, not by the world, but by your own inner commentary. Words, even silent ones, carry weight. Right speech toward the self begins with noticing. You can't change what you don't hear, so start listening not with judgment, but with interest. How do you speak to yourself when you make a mistake? When you fall short? When you feel uncertain or vulnerable, do you call yourself names? Do you repeat old criticisms? Do you use words that shrink you? The first shift is awareness, not to correct immediately, but to witness, to observe the tone, the pace, the habit. This observation alone begins to create space between you and the critic. It reveals that this voice is not who you are, it's a pattern, and like any pattern, it can be changed. Right speech asks 3 questions before speaking. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Apply those same questions to your inner voice. When the mind says, "You're a failure," pause. Ask, "Is this true, or is it just fear?" Ask, "Is this kind? Would you say this to someone you love?" Ask, "Is this necessary? Does this comment bring clarity or confusion?" Most of the time, the critic fails the test. Its words are exaggerated, its tone is unkind, its impact is heavy. Recognizing this doesn't mean fighting the voice, it means shifting your relationship with it. You don't have to argue. You don't have to agree. You can simply choose a different response. Gentleness is not weakness. Speaking kindly to yourself doesn't mean lying or avoiding responsibility. It means staying close to the truth without adding unnecessary pain. It means treating yourself as someone worthy of care. Instead of saying, "I'm so stupid," say, "I made a mistake, but I'm learning." Instead of saying, "I'll never get this right," say, "This is hard right now, and that's okay." Instead of collapsing into judgment, lean into curiosity. Curiosity opens doors that judgment slams shut. You begin to see that most self-criticism is rooted in fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of being rejected, fear of falling behind. But fear is not a good teacher. It may feel urgent, but it rarely brings wisdom. When you shift your inner voice from fear to compassion, something deep inside starts to relax. Right speech also involves timing. Speaking to yourself harshly in the middle of a struggle is like throwing a rock at someone who's already fallen. Wait, pause. Let the emotion pass before you speak. You don't have to fix everything immediately. You don't have to have answers. You only have to be present. Presence is often more healing than solutions. The inner critic also tends to speak in absolutes: always, never, can't, should. These words create tightness. They shrink possibilities. Replace them with softer language. Instead of, "I'll never figure this out," try, "I'm working through it." Instead of, "I always mess up," try, "Sometimes I struggle and I'm growing." Small changes in words create big shifts in energy. It's not about being positive all the time. It's about being honest without being cruel. It's about meeting yourself where you are, not where you think you should be. Compassionate speech toward yourself also means naming the good. The mind often clings to flaws and overlooks growth. Take time to acknowledge effort, to notice progress, to say thank you to yourself. Not in a forced way, but in recognition of truth. You've made it through difficult days. You've learned. You've kept going. That deserves to be seen. The more you practice right speech internally, the more natural it becomes. It's like watering a seed. At first, the soil might feel dry, the words might feel awkward. But with time, new growth emerges. A different tone, a different relationship with yourself. One that's grounded in understanding, not judgment. This practice also brings humility. It shows you how many of your struggles are made heavier by your own thinking. Not because you're flawed, but because no one taught you another way. Now, you have the chance to learn, to speak differently, to relate to your inner life with care. Right speech also includes silence. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can say to yourself is nothing at all. Let the breath speak. Let the body speak. Let presence hold what the mind tries to label. Words are powerful, but they are not always needed. Create space between thoughts, between reactions. Let the silence teach you. Let it soften you. This practice also affects how you relate to others. When your inner voice becomes gentler, your outer voice follows. You become less reactive, less harsh, more patient, more real. You stop projecting your inner war onto the world. You also become more forgiving, because you know what it feels like to struggle with your own mind. You know what it's like to stumble. So you meet others with empathy, not judgment. This is not weakness. It's maturity. Self-compassion creates a foundation of safety. From that foundation, growth is possible. Change becomes easier, not because you push harder, but because you feel supported by your own attention. This shift is not instant. It's gradual. It unfolds over time. But every moment you choose a kinder word, every time you soften the tone, you are training your mind. You are planting seeds of peace. Eventually, the critic loses its grip. It still appears, but it no longer controls. It becomes background noise, not the main voice. And in its place, something else arises, a voice of wisdom, a voice of presence, a voice that doesn't rush or judge or demand. That voice speaks from the breath, from the body, from awareness. It says, "You're doing your best." It says, "This moment is enough." It says, "Stay." Let that be the voice you trust. Let that be the speech you return to. Gentle, honest, present. When the voice inside you softens, the world outside begins to sound different too. The pressure lowers, the tone changes. You no longer rush past the present moment, trying to escape your own thoughts. You start to hear life again, not as background noise, not as something to filter out, but as part of your experience, as something alive, as something worth listening to. Sound is one of the fastest ways to return to presence. It happens instantly, without needing effort. Before a thought forms, before attention drifts, sound reaches you. It is constant, whether loud or soft, clear or subtle. You don't have to search for it. You don't have to analyze it. You just have to let it in. Auditory awareness is the practice of full listening, not to words, but to raw sound. Not to meaning, but to vibration. It is mindfulness through the ears, and it's often overlooked. People chase silence as if that's the goal, but the present moment includes sound. The hum of the fridge, the wind moving past a window, the click of footsteps, the rustling of fabric. All of it is here. All of it can bring you back. The beauty of this practice is that it asks for nothing extra. You don't need special equipment or a meditation cushion. You only need to listen, not with the intention to judge or fix, but with the intention to receive, to become aware of sound as it is, without resistance. This kind of listening isn't passive, it's alive. It wakes you up from thought. You stop narrating your experience and begin to feel it directly. Sound is not just a background to life, it's a doorway into it. You can begin with whatever is already here. Close your eyes, even for just a moment, and allow the ears to open fully. Notice the closest sound, then the farthest, then the space between them. There is always a rhythm, a layering, an unfolding. And unlike the inner voice, sound has no commentary. It just moves. It doesn't argue. It doesn't plan. It doesn't replay the past. It arises, lasts briefly, then dissolves. This is presence in motion. This is the now made audible. You may notice how often the mind filters sound. It decides what to pay attention to and what to ignore. It calls one thing beautiful and another annoying. It holds preferences. But when you practice pure listening, you drop the labels. You let a car horn be no different from a bird call. You hear tone, pitch, texture, not story. This changes your relationship with your surroundings. Sounds stop being problems and start being experiences. Even something previously irritating can become interesting. A dripping faucet becomes a pattern. The hum of traffic becomes a low drum. You begin to feel less like you're being interrupted and more like you're being reminded to return. Every sound is a call to be here, not in thought, not in memory, but in your body, in your senses, in your awareness. Listening also teaches humility. You realize how much you usually talk over reality, how often you fill silence with assumptions. When you start to truly listen, you let the world speak, and it always has something to say. Sound grounds you in the moment, but it also deepens your connection to space. You become aware of distance, direction, movement. You feel yourself in relation to everything around you, not as separate, but as part of a larger whole. This is embodiment through sound. It also helps calm the nervous system. When you listen without resistance, you shift from reaction to receptivity. You're no longer tensing against noise, you're allowing it to pass through you. This teaches your body that not every sound is a threat, that you can stay soft and alert at the same time. You don't have to like every sound, but you can let every sound become part of the moment. This openness is what transforms your experience. You can take this practice into daily life. Listen while walking, not just to music, but to the world around you, the sound of your shoes, the leaves moving, the rhythm of distant voices. Let it all in, just as it is. When you eat, hear the utensils, hear the chewing, the water being poured, the sigh that comes after swallowing. Nothing needs to be added, only received. Even during conversation, auditory awareness changes everything. You don't just hear the words. You hear tone, pacing, pauses. You become present with the person, not just their message. You stop preparing your reply and start truly listening. This changes connection. It brings depth. It creates space for understanding beyond words. Listening in this way also reveals your inner state. When you're tense, sound feels intrusive. When you're open, sound becomes part of the flow. Your reaction to sound teaches you about your relationship with the present. And it's not just about external sound. Internal sound matters too. The subtle ring in the ears, the sound of breath, the pulse in your head. These too can be noticed. They are part of your landscape, and they shift as your awareness deepens. There's also the silence between sounds. This is not emptiness. It's not a blank. It's a space full of awareness. It's the background that holds every note, every tone. When you rest in this silence, you're not escaping sound, you're feeling its container. You begin to notice the ebb and flow. Sound, silence, sound again. Awareness remains steady. You begin to sense the stillness beneath movement, the quiet behind everything. This is the sound of presence. Not something you hear with ears, but something you feel with your whole being. Auditory awareness can even support emotional healing. Music, tones, chants, all have been used across cultures for transformation. But even beyond structured sound, the act of listening itself can be healing, because it brings you out of mental loops, because it invites you back into contact with what is real. You're not asked to understand, only to hear, only to let go of resistance long enough to let life touch you again. There is something deeply honest about sound. It doesn't lie, it doesn't pretend, it can't be held or controlled. It arrives and leaves on its own. It teaches impermanence. It teaches surrender. And the more you practice listening, the more sensitive you become, not fragile, but aware of nuance, aware of change, aware of presence within movement. This awareness grows without effort. You don't have to analyze. You don't have to control your hearing. You simply have to return, over and over, to what is already here. Let sound guide you. Let it bring you back. Let it hold you in now. No thought is needed, no explanation, just this, just hearing, just presence unfolding in your ears. That is enough. That is the path. Sound draws you back to the moment again and again, not through force, but by its very nature, fleeting, honest, direct. When you stop resisting noise, you begin to hear clearly. And once you've learned to receive the world through your ears, without judgment, a deeper challenge begins to surface, not just hearing sound, but hearing people. Not just listening to the present, but listening to others, without inserting yourself into every pause. Conversation is where most people forget mindfulness. The attention that was steady during silence begins to drift. The moment someone speaks, the mind begins rehearsing a response, creating arguments, forming stories. Instead of being with the person speaking, you're inside your own thoughts, preparing to be heard. This habit is common, but it prevents real connection. It turns every conversation into a competition for space. Letting go of the urge to prepare your next sentence changes everything. It's not about saying nothing, it's about being fully present before you speak. That pause, that willingness to wait, makes room for something real to arise. You stop reacting from old patterns. You start responding from clarity. This practice requires presence that is felt, not performed. It asks for honesty. It requires you to hold back the impulse to correct, to fix, to steer the conversation toward your comfort. And this takes courage, because it often means surrendering control. But in that surrender, something powerful happens. You start to actually hear the other person. Not just their words, but their intention, their emotion, their need. When you drop your agenda, the other person feels it. They feel the space around your attention. They feel seen, not as a character in your story, but as someone whole in their own right. That alone can shift the energy in a conversation. Defensiveness softens, walls come down, trust builds. This type of listening isn't passive. It's not about sitting quietly while planning your next opinion. It's active in a deeper sense. You're engaged not with your arguments, but with your awareness. You're attending to tone, rhythm, silence, and the emotions beneath the surface. You're meeting the moment without reaching for control. This doesn't mean you agree with everything you hear. It means you stay open long enough to understand before you evaluate. It means that instead of assuming, you listen. Instead of rushing to reply, you slow down. Instead of defending your position, you give space to theirs. This shift doesn't just make you a better listener, it makes you a more grounded person. The mind often confuses speed with intelligence, but wisdom speaks slowly. It doesn't shout over others. It listens fully and responds when it's time. That timing matters. When you speak from presence instead of preparation, your words carry weight. They come from depth, not reaction. They serve the conversation rather than compete with it. One of the reasons people interrupt or zone out during conversation is fear. Fear of being misunderstood, overlooked, rejected. The mind races to protect itself. It wants to stay ahead. But this urgency disconnects you from the now. The need to be right replaces the desire to relate, and connection suffers. When you release the need to control the outcome of a conversation, you begin to trust the process itself. You realize you don't need to win, you don't need to prove, you only need to show up, fully, honestly, without clinging to your image or your role or your knowledge. Letting go of clinging in conversation also means letting go of assumptions. The mind constantly projects, filling in blanks, finishing sentences, interpreting motives. But mindfulness asks you to pause and consider, what if I don't know? What if I'm wrong? What if there's something here I haven't seen yet? This not knowing is not weakness, it's openness. It creates space for learning. It creates room for surprise, for growth, for discovery. It allows the person in front of you to be new rather than a repeat of your past stories. Silence plays a key role in this practice. Most people are uncomfortable with it. They rush to fill the gap. But when you allow space between words, something deeper can emerge. You don't just speak out of habit, you speak when it matters. And sometimes you don't speak at all. Sometimes listening is enough. Being mindful in conversation also means being aware of your body. Are you leaning in or pulling back? Are you breathing or holding your breath? Are your shoulders soft or tense? These physical signals give you insight into your state of mind. They show you where you might be clinging, where you might be resisting. Bringing awareness to these signals helps you self-regulate. It helps you return to presence. You realize that being in conversation doesn't mean abandoning yourself. You don't have to disappear. You don't have to perform. You can be fully here, aware of yourself and the other at the same time. This balance between self and other is the heart of mindful communication. It's not about sacrificing your truth for harmony. It's about holding both truths gently. It's about listening without disappearing, speaking without dominating. You also start to notice your emotional triggers. Certain words or tones may cause reactivity. The old habit is to respond instantly, to defend or withdraw. But mindfulness offers another option. Pause, feel, breathe, then speak. That small shift changes everything. It breaks the cycle of unconscious reaction. This practice can be especially powerful in difficult conversations. When emotions are high, the urge to cling is strongest. But if you can stay grounded, if you can listen without retreating, speak without attacking, then even conflict becomes a space for growth. You begin to see that the goal of conversation is not agreement. It's not control. It's understanding. And understanding comes from presence, not from winning. When you stop trying to manage how others see you, your speech becomes more honest. You stop editing yourself to maintain an image. You speak from truth, not from performance. This authenticity invites others to do the same. Non-clinging in conversation is also an act of compassion. It says, I care enough to stop planning my response. I care enough to let you speak without interruption. I care enough to be here. That care is felt. It's healing. Over time, this practice creates deeper relationships, not because you always agree, but because you trust each other to be real, to be present, to listen with the intention to understand, not to win. It also brings more peace to your inner life. The conversations in your head begin to shift. The same patience you practice with others starts to extend inward. You become less reactive, not just externally, but internally. You notice when your mind starts preparing, rehearsing, judging, and you come back. You breathe, you stay. You learn to trust that presence is enough, that you don't have to control everything to be okay. And as that trust deepens, so does your freedom. You begin to enjoy conversation again, not for the outcome, but for the connection. Not to impress, but to relate. Not to be heard, but to hear. You stop clinging to your next sentence. You stop clinging to your point. You stop clinging to your need to be understood. And in that release, presence becomes possible. You speak less, but you say more. You listen more, but you lose nothing. You return to now, again and again, even in the middle of dialogue, even in the middle of misunderstanding. This is what it means to be truly present with another human being, to meet them without armor, to listen without grasping, to speak without fear, to stay. Letting go of control in conversation teaches you something that reaches far beyond words. You begin to see that so much of what drives restlessness is not external. It's not the other person. It's the subtle grasping for validation, certainty, and approval. It's the belief that something else needs to happen before you can feel peace, that something more will finally make things feel complete. But what if nothing more is needed? The mind has been trained to move forward toward the next sentence, the next goal, the next version of yourself. And while awareness can slow this momentum, the root of that movement is often harder to face. It's the belief that now is not enough, that you are not enough, that life, in this exact moment, is somehow incomplete. This belief creates tension, it builds pressure, it feeds anxiety. In Buddhist practice, there is a word that offers a different path, santuti. It means contentment. Not passive acceptance, not resignation, but a steady knowing that this moment, as it is, holds enough. This doesn't mean you stop growing. It doesn't mean you stop dreaming. It means you stop tying your peace to the future. Contentment isn't about having less. It's about needing less to feel whole. It's about stepping out of the story that says you'll be okay when you get there, when you reach that number, complete that task, fix that flaw. That story has no end. It only creates a quiet dissatisfaction that follows you no matter how much you accomplish. The idea that something is always missing is deeply conditioned. From a young age, you're taught to strive, to achieve, to improve. And there is nothing wrong with effort. But when striving becomes your identity, you lose sight of presence. You live in the next thing. You forget how to feel content with what already is. Contentment begins with a pause. It starts by noticing what's already here. Your breath, your body, a small quiet. It doesn't need to be impressive. It only needs to be real. Santuti invites you to turn toward your current experience, not with judgment, but with appreciation, noticing that you are breathing, that you are supported, that this moment, even with its imperfections, is whole in its own way. The mantra of enough is not a sentence you repeat, it's a truth you live into. It says, I don't have to chase peace, I don't have to earn worth, I don't have to improve myself into happiness. I can rest in what's here. I can meet this life, right now, without turning it into a project. This practice doesn't deny pain, it doesn't ignore longing, but it holds those experiences with spaciousness rather than urgency. It allows sorrow to be present without becoming a problem. It allows desire to rise and pass without becoming your identity. You stop measuring yourself by what you haven't yet done. A big part of anxiety comes from a constant sense of lack, a belief that there's something you're supposed to be doing or being that you haven't yet figured out. Santuti cuts through that belief. It reminds you that the moment you're in is not a placeholder. It's not preparation for something better. It is your life. This doesn't mean you don't have goals. It means your sense of peace isn't postponed until they're achieved. It means you're not waiting for life to begin once you become a different version of yourself. You stop trying to outrun the now. You also begin to recognize the cost of never feeling satisfied. It shows up as burnout, even when you're achieving. It shows up as numbness, even when things are going well. When your attention is always fixed on what's next, you miss the richness of what's here. You miss the small joys, the quiet beauty, the ordinary magic. Contentment invites you to slow down enough to notice the way light moves across the wall, the rhythm of your steps, the warmth in your hands. These aren't distractions from the important things. They are the important things. When you begin practicing Santuti, you might notice resistance, a voice that says, "But if I stop pushing, I'll fall behind." This voice is understandable. It's been trained to equate striving with value. But contentment doesn't mean giving up. It means working from wholeness, not lack. It means moving with the moment, not against it. And what you find is that when you act from contentment, your actions become clearer. You're not driven by fear. You're not reacting to insecurity. You're choosing from a place of stability. This brings more efficiency, not less. More clarity, not confusion. You also begin to recognize how much of your thinking is about getting somewhere. The mind says, "When I figure this out," or "once this is fixed." These thoughts create tension because they take you out of now. But when you meet those thoughts with awareness and return to Santuthi, you feel yourself soften. You remember that the future is always an idea, that you are already here. You don't have to abandon growth, but you can let go of becoming as your identity. You can be rooted in the present and still move. You can hold contentment and direction at the same time. Santuthi also helps you relate to others differently. You stop comparing constantly. You stop using other people's lives as a measuring stick. Instead of feeling behind, you feel grounded. You begin to celebrate what others have without feeling like it takes anything from you. You stop turning connection into competition. This inner shift is subtle but profound. You notice when your language changes. You start saying, "This is good," instead of, "It'll be better when." You say, "I have enough," instead of, "I need just one more." You feel less grasping, less craving, more peace. Craving is a central cause of suffering in Buddhist teaching. It's not just craving for things, it's craving for moments to be different than they are. Contentment dissolves craving not by force, but by awareness. You see the craving arise. You don't follow it. You stay. You breathe. This also supports emotional balance. When something difficult happens, you don't feel like your whole peace is ruined. Contentment gives you an inner stability that doesn't depend on mood or outcome. You're able to feel discomfort without collapsing into it. You're able to hold joy without fearing its end. You stop expecting life to feel a certain way before you can relax. You start relaxing now. This practice can be cultivated anywhere. When you eat, notice the taste fully. Let it be enough. When you walk, feel your feet. Let it be enough. When you rest, let it be rest, not preparation for doing more later. Even the breath becomes a place to return, not to control it, but to notice that it's happening, that you are supported, that nothing more needs to happen for this moment to be real. Santuthi doesn't come from retreating into isolation. It lives in ordinary life. It grows in grocery lines, in traffic, in waiting rooms. These moments where the mind wants more speed, more progress, are where contentment is most powerful. You begin to notice how often peace is available if only you stop looking past it. This doesn't mean life becomes passive. It becomes intentional. You don't stop creating. You stop overreaching. You don't stop caring. You stop controlling. You trust that now is a place worth living in. And from that trust, your whole inner world shifts. The heart softens, the breath opens, the nervous system relaxes. You stop needing the next moment to fix the current one. You feel the truth of this practice, not as a concept, but as a felt sense. You know it not in your thoughts, but in your body, in the shoulders dropping, in the hands unclenching, in the sigh that rises without effort. That is the sound of enough. Let it guide you. Let it teach you. Let it root you in a life that no longer needs to be earned to be felt. The breath slows, the body softens, and something inside becomes still. After learning to feel the weight of striving, you've begun to understand the quiet power of enough. Contentment allows space to open where urgency once lived. But in everyday life, that sense of peace is constantly tested. You're pulled back into reaction by one small thing, a message waiting to be sent. That moment, just before clicking send, might feel like nothing, but it carries weight, it holds energy, it reflects your intention. And that second, the one you often overlook, is sacred. So many misunderstandings begin not in what was said, but in how quickly it was said. So much regret lives in those few seconds of impulse. When something is typed in frustration, or shared too soon, or said with a tone that wasn't meant, there's no way to pull it back. But what if that moment became a doorway into mindfulness? What if the space before the send button was treated as a practice? In Buddhist teachings, mindfulness is not limited to silence or stillness. It includes action. It includes communication. It includes the decisions made in daily life, especially the ones made on autopilot. And in this world of speed, the pause before sending is one of the last places where awareness can return. This practice is not about hesitation. It's not about censoring yourself. It's about checking in with clarity, honesty, and intention. It's about ensuring that what you say reflects what you truly mean. It turns communication into a mindful act, not a reaction. When you pause before sending, the first question to ask is simple: why am I saying this? Not what is the content, not how it sounds, but what is underneath it. Is there reactivity? Is there pressure? Is there a desire to prove something, to control the outcome, to get a certain response? Clarity of intention changes the energy behind your words. Even the exact same sentence, sent from presence rather than fear, lands differently. People feel it, and more importantly, you feel it. Your nervous system doesn't have to brace itself for regret. You speak from alignment, not urgency. The pause also allows you to feel the body. Is there tension in your fingers, in your shoulders, in your breath? Often these signals reveal more than your thoughts do. They tell you whether you're pushing too hard, whether you're grounded, whether you're coming from defense or peace. By becoming aware of the body's state, you create space to shift it. One breath, one unclenching, one exhale. This is all it takes to move from impulse to choice. This choice doesn't only protect others, it protects your own mind. Messages sent in agitation often extend agitation. Words typed in a rush tend to carry the feeling of that rush. But when you pause, you break the cycle. You refuse to pass on restlessness. You take responsibility for the energy you contribute to the world. The sacred pause is a boundary. It holds your words back just long enough to let your heart catch up. It creates a buffer between thought and expression. In that buffer, wisdom can speak, insight can rise, emotion can settle. This is especially powerful during conflict. When emotions run high, the urge to defend or strike back can feel overwhelming, but no message sent in that state will ever bring the peace you actually want. The pause makes room for maturity, for kindness, for restraint. Restraint is not repression. It's not holding in what you truly feel. It's choosing the right moment, the right tone, and the right presence to express what matters most. Sometimes, the pause shows you that the message doesn't need to be sent at all, that it was written in a storm that has already passed, that it was more about being seen than about truly connecting. That silence would speak more clearly than words. Other times, it affirms your clarity. It shows you that your words are true, necessary, and kind, that what you've written holds presence, that sending it serves communication, not your ego. This practice also reminds you that once words are shared, they move beyond you. They take on a life of their own. They're read in someone else's mind, in someone else's mood, through someone else's lens. You can't control how they'll be received, but you can ensure that they were sent with care. The sacred pause is not only useful for difficult messages, it's equally valuable for everyday communication. Texts, emails, comments, all of it becomes part of your energetic footprint. It's not about perfection, it's about alignment. With practice, this pause becomes a habit. You find yourself breathing before responding. You begin editing less and feeling more. Your words become simpler but more meaningful. You speak less often, but with more presence. You stop filling space with noise. This practice also helps you notice your communication patterns. Do you write to fill space, to avoid discomfort, to chase validation? Do you say yes too quickly? Do you rush to answer out of guilt or fear of being misunderstood? Pausing before sending lets you check in with truth. Is this a real yes? Is this a clear no? Am I speaking from my center or from a script? When you honor that moment before sending, you start to live in alignment. Your words match your values. Your communication reflects your practice. You stop carrying the weight of conversations that didn't feel true. You become lighter. And people feel this shift. They may not say it directly, but they'll sense that you're speaking from presence, that you're not just reacting, that you're choosing. This builds trust. It makes space for real connection, even in a digital world. The pause also teaches patience. In a culture of speed, waiting even a few seconds feels radical. But patience brings depth. It turns messages into offerings, not just exchanges. It turns language into a mirror, not a weapon. You begin to trust the pause. You begin to rely on it. You know that your first draft isn't always your clearest. You give your words time to settle. You let them rise from stillness, not chaos. Sometimes the pause is a breath. Sometimes it's a full minute. Sometimes it's stepping away and returning later. There's no rule. There's only presence. Only the willingness to wait for truth. This is mindfulness in action. Not in theory, not in silence, but in how you speak to others, in how you show up in conversation, in how you send yourself out into the world, one word at a time. With each message, you have a choice: to rush or to rest, to perform or to connect, to react or to reflect. Let the pause show you the difference. Let it become part of your rhythm. Let it protect what matters most: your attention, your truth, your peace. That pause before sending a message taught you something subtle but transformative. The space between impulse and action is where freedom lives. In that space, you saw clearly, you felt your motives. You breathed before responding. That same awareness, turned inward, reveals an even deeper layer of experience. Beneath every thought, word, or action, something quieter is guiding you. Sensation, not emotion, not story, but the raw feeling tone underneath. In Buddhist practice, this layer is known as Vedana. It's the body's immediate response to experience the basic flavor that arises before the mind forms opinions. Every moment carries one of three tones: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. These tones appear instantly, without language, without logic. They color your reactions long before you realize it. Most people are not taught to feel them. They are taught to jump, move toward the pleasant, flee the unpleasant, ignore the neutral. These reactions happen fast, often without your awareness. You chase comfort, avoid discomfort, and overlook stillness. Not because you're weak, but because you're conditioned to react instead of observe. But when you slow down enough to notice Vedana as it arises, something begins to shift. You see the pattern forming before it pulls you in. You watch the body lean toward or away from, a feeling not because it's right or wrong, but because it's conditioned to protect or pursue. This is the first insight of this practice. Sensation drives behavior. A slight warmth can lead to attachment. A mild irritation can turn into anger. A neutral moment can trigger restlessness, not because of the content, but because of the tone the body assigns to it. You start to notice this in real time. Someone speaks, and a sensation arises. Before the meaning registers, your body has already labeled it as pleasant or not. That label determines your tone, your response, even your posture. The mind tells a story to justify it afterward, but the root is Vedana. The reactivity is already in motion. This is not a problem, it's information. When you bring attention to the feeling tone without judgment, you begin to pause. Just like the space before sending a message, there is space before reacting to sensation. That space is where awareness enters. Pleasant sensations can be enjoyed without clinging. You feel the comfort, the ease, the joy, but you don't grasp. You don't chase more. You let it be enough. You experience the pleasant without needing to repeat it endlessly. Unpleasant sensations can be felt without resistance. You notice the tightness, the burn, the contraction, but you don't escape. You stay long enough to see that discomfort is not danger, that it arises, peaks, and fades, that you can hold it without collapsing. Neutral sensations can be met with interest. You don't need constant stimulation. You don't overlook what feels empty or dull. Instead, you become curious. You notice the quiet textures of now. You see that what seems boring is often the doorway to peace. Vedana teaches impermanence directly. No feeling tone lasts. Even strong sensations shift. When you observe them without reaction, you begin to trust this truth. The craving for more, the aversion to less, they weaken, not through force, but through seeing. This seeing isn't intellectual, it's embodied. You feel the movement of sensation, the rise and fall, the way it influences thought. You stop being tricked into believing every thought is true just because the body reacts to it. You stop letting sensation define reality. You also become more compassionate. When you see how your own discomfort drives reaction, you understand others better. You see that their sharpness may be rooted in a painful tone. Their distance may come from discomfort. Their behavior may not be personal, it may be conditioned. This softens your reactivity. You become less defensive, less quick to judge, more able to stay with others, even when their presence challenges your comfort. You don't need to protect yourself with blame. You can stay with what is. Vedana also helps you recognize when craving disguises itself. Craving doesn't always feel urgent. Sometimes it's subtle, a gentle tug toward distraction, a small push towards something sweeter. But it's still movement away from now. When you see it, you can name it, not as wrong, but as impermanent. You don't need to follow it. This builds inner strength, not the strength to endure forcefully, but the strength to stay with presence, to be with sensation no matter the tone. This is true equanimity, not becoming numb, not becoming indifferent, but meeting each tone with balance. You begin to see that the body is constantly communicating, not through language, but through feeling. It shows you what it likes, what it resists, what it overlooks. When you listen, you develop a new kind of intelligence, a wisdom rooted in direct experience. And when you live from this awareness, you suffer less, not because pain disappears, but because reaction softens. You stop fueling patterns with unconscious behavior. You respond instead of react. You stay instead of escape. Vedana practice also deepens your understanding of identity. You start to see how easily the self forms around sensation. I like this. I hate that. This makes me feel good. These become the seeds of attachment. But when you watch feeling tones without clinging, the sense of self begins to soften. You become more fluid, less fixed. You realize you are not your preferences. You are not your reactions. You are not your pleasantness or your pain. You are the awareness in which these tones arise. This seeing creates spaciousness. In daily life, this practice helps you navigate complexity. When you feel pulled by strong emotions, you pause. You check the tone beneath the story. Is this just discomfort? Is this a craving dressed up as urgency? Is this neutrality triggering boredom? You stay curious. You ask without judgment. You stay with sensation just long enough to let it speak. And often, what it says is simple: I'm here. That's all. It doesn't need fixing. It needs attention. This is mindfulness in its most refined form, not only watching thoughts or breath, but the tone of each moment, the flavor of now, the quiet tug behind every reaction. The more you practice, the more stability you build. Sensation no longer dictates behavior. Feeling no longer becomes fate. You are no longer pulled by every push or pushed by every pull. Instead, you remain. You rest in awareness that does not cling. You listen to the language of the body, but you don't become its echo. You observe tone, but you don't let it hijack your presence. This is liberation, moment by moment. The freedom to stay, the strength to feel, the clarity to respond. Let sensation rise, let it fall, let it teach you what's here. You don't have to control it. You only have to see. The moment you begin to recognize how feeling tones drive your reactions, something deeper begins to surface. You notice how often decisions are made, not with clarity, but with subtle craving or avoidance. Even the smallest action can arise from unconscious grasping. Nowhere is this more obvious or more overlooked than in your relationship with money. Money, by itself, is neutral. It's paper, metal, numbers on a screen. But the way you relate to it reveals so much. Not because money is spiritual or unspiritual, but because it reflects the mind's habits so clearly. How you spend, how you save, how you earn, how you give, these are expressions of inner states. They mirror what you value, what you fear, what you chase. In Buddhist teaching, the middle way offers a path between extremes, not too tight, not too loose. This principle applies not only to meditation or moral conduct, but to daily life. And when it comes to money, this middle path is often forgotten. People swing between hoarding and overindulging, between clinging and carelessness, between scarcity and greed. The tension is internal, but it manifests through financial behavior. When mindfulness is brought into financial decision-making, the goal is not perfection, it's awareness. To see what drives your choices. To notice if you're acting from fear, from habit, from pressure. This seeing does not require judgment. It requires honesty. And from that honesty, balance begins to form. Spending can be an act of generosity or an act of grasping. The same purchase, made with different intention, creates different results in the heart. When you buy something hoping it will complete you, or distract you, or numb discomfort, it becomes a form of escape. But when you buy with presence, with care, with enoughness, it feels light, clean, satisfying without needing to be excessive. The key is pausing. Just like the sacred pause before clicking send, there's a pause before a transaction that reveals a lot. What are you feeling? Are you trying to change your mood through consumption? Are you avoiding discomfort? Are you proving something? These are questions worth asking. They open space between the urge and the action. On the other side, saving money can be rooted in wisdom or in fear. It can reflect prudence and clarity, or scarcity and mistrust. The difference lies in the tone beneath the action. Are you saving because it brings peace and stability, or because you never feel safe, no matter the number? Again, the same behavior, different intention, different impact. Earning money also brings lessons. Many people tie their sense of worth to income. They begin to believe that more money means more value, that productivity equals identity. This belief creates stress, comparison, and constant striving. Mindfulness interrupts that pattern. It asks, who are you when you're not achieving? Can you earn without becoming what you earn? Can you work from joy rather than anxiety? The middle way with money means letting go of extremes, not through rules, but through inner reflection. You notice when spending becomes compulsive. You notice when saving becomes obsessive. You notice when giving becomes performative. This noticing brings choice. Generosity is an important part of Buddhist practice, but true generosity arises from contentment, not guilt. You give not to prove your goodness, but to share what you genuinely feel is enough. You don't give to fix others or to gain recognition. You give because you are no longer holding so tightly. At the same time, healthy boundaries are part of wisdom. Generosity doesn't mean giving beyond your capacity. It means giving in balance with mindfulness, with care, with understanding of impact. Sometimes the generous thing is to say no. Sometimes it's to invest in yourself. The balance is personal. The awareness is what matters. Mindfulness in money also shows you where your fears live. Many people carry unexamined beliefs. There's never enough. I'm bad with money. Rich people are greedy. If I relax, I'll lose everything. These thoughts are inherited, absorbed, rarely questioned. But they shape behavior. They shape stress. They create identity. Bringing awareness to these stories allows you to step out of them. You start to ask, is this thought true? Is it serving me? What happens when I believe it? What happens when I don't? You also begin to feel into the body's response to financial conversations. Does your chest tighten when talking about expenses? Does your breath shorten when opening bills? These signals show how money has become more than it is. They point toward areas that need softening, not just strategy. The middle way doesn't mean avoiding goals. It means holding them lightly. You can want financial stability without clinging. You can build wealth without losing your values. You can be ambitious without becoming aggressive. It's not about rejecting money. It's about relating to it from presence. Mindfulness also brings clarity to consumption, not only in what you buy, but in what you consume through attention. Financial choices are part of a larger ecosystem of values. What you support, where you spend, how you invest, all of it reflects deeper layers of your relationship with life. You begin to notice the feeling behind the desire. Are you seeking comfort, escape, validation? Can you stay with the feeling instead of numbing it through spending? This is not about deprivation. It's about freedom. The freedom to choose rather than react. The freedom to spend with awareness, to save with balance, to earn with integrity. Financial mindfulness is a long path. It's not fixed overnight. But each moment of awareness brings change. You begin to see habits not as flaws, but as opportunities. You begin to feel less controlled by fear. You stop letting numbers define you. This shift doesn't require dramatic action. It begins in small ways. Checking in before spending, breathing before making a decision, reflecting after a financial interaction. These moments add up. They shape new patterns. They build trust not just in money, but in yourself. You start to feel peace not from accumulation, but from alignment. You begin to live from enoughness. You let go of constant comparison. You release the belief that your value rises and falls with your bank account. You begin to see money not as the goal, but as a mirror. It shows where you grasp, where you fear, where you resist. It also shows where you trust, where you give, where you rest. Let your financial life be part of your practice. Let it teach you balance. Let it reveal where you still cling and where you are free. Each transaction becomes a moment of mindfulness. Each choice becomes an invitation to return to presence. Mindfulness in money opens up a raw truth. No amount of control over material things can quiet the mind if the mind is always waiting for the result. You can track every expense, earn with integrity, give with careened, still suffer if your peace depends on what happens next. The craving to know how it will turn out, the hope that your actions guarantee a certain reward, this attachment to outcome quietly robs you of the moment itself. So much effort is spent trying to secure a future that hasn't happened yet. You act, and immediately the mind projects forward will. This work, will they approve? Will I succeed? Will it be worth it? But in this projection, something subtle is lost. The action is no longer enough on its own. It becomes a tool, a transaction, a test. Equanimity, or upekkha in the Pali tradition, teaches another way. It invites you to participate fully without grasping for results. It's not indifference. It's not detachment in the cold sense. It's deep balance. It's showing up completely for the act while allowing the outcome to unfold however it will. This isn't passive acceptance. It's grounded engagement. You still care. You still give your best. You still show up with presence, but you don't hinge your peace on what follows. You don't make your value, your joy, or your sense of stability dependent on what the world gives you back. Equanimity shifts where power lives. Instead of being at the mercy of outcomes you can't fully control, you root yourself in the action itself. You begin to notice how much energy is wasted waiting for a result, measuring worth by feedback, tying effort to reward. This doesn't mean you stop setting goals. It means you stop losing yourself in their pursuit. This shift requires honesty. You ask, why am I doing this? Is it for recognition, approval, certainty? What am I trying to secure with this effort? And if those things don't come, can I still stand in peace? When equanimity deepens, the pressure lifts. You stop forcing moments to go a certain way. You stop shaping your actions to guarantee praise. You begin to trust that right action, done with clarity, is enough. Whether it brings success or failure becomes secondary. This is not easy. The mind has been taught to measure everything by outcome, productivity, efficiency, results. But this lens turns life into a calculation. Equanimity restores it as a presence. It asks, can you love the doing more than the getting? In meditation, this means sitting without hoping for a perfect state. In conversation, it means listening without needing agreement. In work, it means giving effort without tying it to praise. In creative expression, it means offering your voice without needing applause. You don't give up excellence, you give up attachment. You keep your standards, but you don't collapse when they aren't met. You stay steady even when plans change, results fall short, or recognition doesn't arrive. Equanimity gives you this steadiness. It's not dramatic. It doesn't feel like a high. It feels like strength, quiet, rooted, unshaken. It lives in your breath when everything is uncertain. It lives in your posture when nothing goes as planned. It lives in your actions when there's no guarantee they'll be seen. You begin to move from a deeper place. Not reaction, not expectation, but presence. You show up because it's the right thing to do, not because it will get you something. This builds trust in yourself. You know that your actions come from alignment, not anxiety. It also makes failure feel different. Not like a collapse, but like part of the path. Not like evidence of unworthiness, but like data, something to meet, not fear. This shift frees up energy, because so much suffering comes not from what happens, but from clinging to what was supposed to happen. When you unhook from outcome, you become more alive. You're no longer living in some future where things finally go right. You're here, doing the thing, feeling the breath, living the process. This is where peace begins. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care without losing your center. You love without controlling. You give without demanding return. You act from purpose, not pressure. And because of this, you actually become more effective. When you're not paralyzed by fear of failure, you take clearer steps. When you're not addicted to success, you move with more freedom. Your creativity opens up, your intuition sharpens, your decisions become less reactive and more wise. Equanimity, also transforms relationships. You stop needing people to respond a certain way to feel safe. You stop waiting for perfect conditions to feel close. You stop demanding emotional outcomes. This makes your love steadier, your presence deeper, your support more unconditional. You also start to recognize how clinging to results distorts the purity of action. You notice the subtle tension when you expect praise, the tightness when things don't unfold the way you hoped, the crash when the reward isn't what you imagined. Equanimity softens all of this. It reminds you that your peace doesn't need a specific story to unfold. It brings you back to this breath, this choice, this presence. You begin to live more from being than from bargaining. This practice is not about pretending not to care. It's about caring from a deeper place, a place not shaken by change, a place not defined by success, a place not caught in control. You keep engaging fully but from stillness, not striving. Letting go of outcome also deepens humility. You realize you don't control as much as you thought. You stop demanding that life meet your timeline. You stop taking credit for everything that goes well, blame for everything that doesn't. This frees you from constant self-judgment. You still learn, you still refine, you still take feedback, but you do it from a grounded place. You are no longer crushed by imperfection or inflated by praise. You begin to rest in your own integrity, not in others' approval. Equanimity doesn't mean you disconnect. It means you show up without needing to be rescued by results. It means you give without attachment, receive without grasping, release without regret. And slowly, your nervous system learns this balance. Your breath becomes more steady, your reactions more calm, your attention more anchored in now. You stop chasing the next thing to feel whole. You live with what is. Let each action become its own reward. Let each step be complete in itself. Let your presence be the outcome. And let that be enough. Letting go of outcomes returns you to the purity of the present. You begin to notice the quiet power in showing up for what's right in front of you without demanding it turn into something else. This shift toward equanimity naturally draws your attention closer to your daily actions, not just the big ones, but the smallest gestures, the ordinary tasks, the overlooked details that shape how you live. And one of the most powerful places this awareness can take root is in how you care for your space. Cleaning is often seen as a chore, something to get through, a task to finish so life can resume. But in Zen teachings, cleaning is not a break from practice, it is the practice. Sweeping, wiping, organizing, putting things in order, these become expressions of mindfulness, devotion, and deep care. Not because they are grand, but because they are fully lived. When you bring presence into housework, everything changes. The act becomes slower, more intentional. Your attention begins to rest, not on the end result, but on the texture of movement. The hand gripping the broom, the sweep across the floor, the sound of cloth on surface. Each detail becomes its own moment of awareness. This is not romanticizing labor, it's meeting it with respect. So often, people rush through daily life, postponing peace until the room looks perfect. But peace doesn't come after everything is spotless. It arises when you become fully engaged in what your hands are doing now. Sweeping meditation invites you to treat space not as something to conquer, but as something to honor. The room you clean is not just physical, it reflects your state of mind. Clutter isn't just mess. It can be a symbol of scattered attention, unprocessed emotions, postponed choices. When you begin to clean mindfully, you begin to clear more than dust. You start to see what you've been avoiding. Each item has a story, a memory, a weight. Bringing mindfulness to these objects allows you to let go of what no longer serves, not out of frustration, but out of clarity. You begin to choose what to keep, not based on guilt or habit, but based on alignment. Does this item support presence? Does it uplift or drain? Is it connected to who you are becoming? This awareness turns cleaning into release. Every sweep of the broom is a letting go. Every wiped surface is a return to simplicity. You're not trying to perfect your home. You're using it as a mirror to reconnect with what matters. Zen tradition treats each space as sacred, not because it is fancy, but because it is alive with attention. Monks clean their temples, not as maintenance, but as meditation. They polish floors as if tending to their own hearts. They wipe windows to clear the fog from their minds. The space is not separate from the self, it reflects it. You can bring this same energy into your home, not by copying ritual, but by changing how you show up. Pause before you begin. Feel your breath. Set down the idea that you need to hurry. Begin with one corner. Notice the sensations, the resistance, the small satisfaction of movement. Let each step be complete. When you wash a dish, just wash. When you fold laundry, just fold. You may notice thoughts trying to pull you away into plans, judgments, distractions. That's okay. Each time you return to the cloth in your hand or the movement of your arm, you're training your attention. You're not cleaning for peace later. You're discovering peace now. This type of engagement can shift your entire experience of your environment. You begin to feel more grounded in your space. It becomes less of a container and more of a companion. You care for it not out of obligation, but out of respect for the present. You also begin to notice your habits. Do you pile things up when you feel overwhelmed? Do you avoid certain corners? Do you hold on to items that carry old versions of yourself? These small acts hold clues. They show where your energy is stuck, where your attention needs to return. Cleaning becomes a way to come back to your body. You feel the weight of objects, the pressure in your muscles, the rhythm of movement. These aren't separate from mindfulness, they are expressions of it. And unlike many forms of meditation, this one has visible results. The surface becomes clear, the room becomes lighter. But more importantly, your mind feels more spacious, your breath flows easier, your body relaxes. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer fighting the moment. This practice also teaches impermanence. No matter how well you clean, dust returns. Things shift. Life happens. You stop aiming for a frozen state of perfection. You learn to care without clinging. You meet each task as it comes, again and again, with steadiness. There is no endpoint, no moment when everything stays fixed. But this becomes liberating. You stop waiting for arrival. You start participating, fully, gently, consistently. This approach to care extends beyond your home. It begins to affect how you treat your body, your schedule, your relationships. You stop waiting for the big transformation. You start showing up for the small moments with heart. You no longer clean as escape. You clean as embodiment. You arrange your environment to reflect your values. You put things in place not because you're controlling, but because order supports attention. You are not forcing stillness. You're creating space for it to rise naturally. Sweeping meditation is not about efficiency. It's not a hack for productivity. It's an invitation to return, over and over, to now, to the action, to the breath. There is beauty in rhythm, in repetition, in the way the same motion, done with care, begins to soften the mind. You begin to find joy in the simplicity of task, in the weight of a warm towel, in the sound of water in a bucket, in the scent of fresh air moving through a window. And there's humility too, in realizing that no task is beneath you, that service to the present moment includes every act. That devotion isn't reserved for sacred objects, it includes the broom, the cloth, the floor. You don't need special conditions to practice. You only need attention. and every room offers a new chance to begin again. Let sweeping become silence. Let folding become stillness. Let your space become a field of presence. And let presence become your home. As the cloth smooths across a surface and the broom clears a path, something begins to open, not just space in the room, but space in the heart. Cleaning with presence reveals that simplicity holds wisdom. The act becomes less about tidiness and more about returning to awareness. And once the outer space begins to reflect inner stillness, something deeper is ready to be seen. What if the moment itself was not just something to pass through, but something to listen to? The present moment is not empty, it carries messages, not in words, but in truth that the body feels, the heart understands, and the mind often misses. In Buddhist teaching, there is a way of relating to life that invites you to see not just events and experiences, but the moment itself as a teacher, as a bodhisattva. Not a figure outside of you, but a living field of guidance always showing you what's real. This is not poetic, it is deeply practical. When you begin to relate to now as something intelligent, not as an obstacle or waiting room, but as an awake presence, you stop resisting what arises. You start listening, not for answers, but for insight. Each sensation, thought, or feeling that arises becomes a mirror. It reflects your habits. It shows where you lean too far forward or pull too far back. The moment becomes a kind of friend, one who doesn't flatter or blame, one who meets you exactly where you are, over and over again, without tiring. There is no past version of you it prefers. No future version it's waiting for. It simply offers what is, and in doing so, gives you a chance to wake up to how you meet life. In Zen, the ordinary is often treated with great care because it's seen as the path itself, not a distraction, not a delay. The way you pour tea, the way you walk across a room, the way you speak to someone in passing, these are not background noise, these are Dharma gates. Each one opens to show you how you're relating to what's here, with clinging, with resistance, with openness. When the present moment is seen this way, irritation becomes instruction, delay becomes teaching, joy becomes a pointer, not something to keep, but something to understand. There is no such thing as wasted time when every moment is a message, not a command, but a gentle question. What are you holding right now? Can you see it? Can you release it? This way of relating to now brings humility. You stop needing to control everything. You begin to feel supported by something you can't name but can sense, not as a force that fixes your life, but as a mirror that never stops showing you what's real. When you feel anxious, the moment shows you your relationship with uncertainty. When you feel frustrated, it shows you your expectations. When you feel joy, it shows you how open you are to life as it is. And when you feel numb, it shows you your tendency to disconnect when things don't match your preferences. This isn't analysis, it's direct contact. You begin to feel how the body responds to now. The breath shortens or lengthens, the shoulders tense or release, the face hardens or softens. All of this is feedback, not judgment, but reflection. The more you tune into this feedback, the more you learn to stay, not out of duty, but out of respect. The present moment is not asking you to be perfect, it's asking you to be honest, to meet what arises without turning away, to see discomfort not as a failure, but as a chance to recognize what you still avoid. In this light, even boredom becomes valuable, not something to fill, but something to feel. Often, boredom is a refusal to meet what is. It's not the absence of stimulation, it's the absence of willingness. The moment asks, can you stay here even when it doesn't entertain you? Can you be with this simplicity? Relating to now as a teacher also dissolves urgency. You stop needing to figure out your whole path. You begin to trust that each moment will show you the next step, not the whole journey, just enough. This trust doesn't come from belief. It comes from experience, from seeing again and again that when you pay attention, you're guided. That guidance may not be comfortable. It may point to your impatience, your pride, your fear, but it never attacks. It only reveals. And with each reveal, you have the choice to react or to respond, to contract or to soften, to judge or to stay curious. The more you respond with curiosity, the more peaceful the moment becomes. Not because the content changes, but because your posture toward it does. You become less like a fighter and more like a student, not passive, but receptive. This receptivity is powerful. It opens insight. It invites you to stop looking for life to deliver peace and start meeting peace in the act of presence. You stop needing the moment to be different. You begin to meet it as it is, and in that meeting, something opens, a calm, a clarity, a grounded sense of being that isn't dependent on what's happening. Even difficulty becomes part of the practice. You no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" but instead, "What is this moment showing me?" This shift removes blame. It removes self-pity. It invites courage, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that stays when things feel hard. Seeing the present as a bodhisattva also transforms your sense of timing. You realize that nothing is late, that lessons come when they're ready to be seen. That resistance often delays learning, but it never erases it. What needs to be faced will return not as punishment, but as kindness. Life is not trying to trap you, it's trying to free you. But it can only do so if you're willing to look. This is not a heavy practice. It's light because it's real. You stop pretending. You start listening. And slowly, you realize that presence is not just neutral ground, it's sacred ground. Not because it's quiet, but because it's honest. You begin to feel at home in your own awareness, not needing to be more, not needing to escape. You also learn to see others differently. When they're upset, you notice how their moment is teaching them too. When they struggle, you sense that they are standing at their own edge. This gives rise to compassion. Not pity, but shared humanity. You stop fixing. You start holding space. Presence teaches patience. With yourself, with others, with the process. You realize there's nothing to rush, nothing to force. Just this moment. Just this chance to show up as you are and see clearly what's here. And if you miss it, the next moment is already offering you the same invitation, again and again. No matter how many times you forget, presence continues to arrive, willing to show you, willing to guide. Let that be enough. Let now be enough. Not as a stopping point, but as the place where all paths begin. Each moment invites you inward, not just to observe what is happening, but to see how you relate to it. When you begin to treat every experience as a guide, the world stops being something to fix or solve and becomes something to meet with presence. The moment teaches, not through answers, but through the act of looking. And sometimes that looking brings you face to face with something the mind cannot grasp. There are questions that do not seek answers. They are not problems to be solved, but doors that open into deeper seeing. In Zen, these questions are called koans. They are not logical puzzles. They are invitations into the unknown, not the kind of unknown that demands certainty, but the kind that opens space, the kind that dissolves the need for control. When you begin to live with koans, life becomes less about arriving and more about staying awake. Not knowing becomes a practice, not a weakness. You meet the question, and instead of rushing to explain it, you let it shape your attention. You let it drop you into presence. A question like, "Who am I?" cannot be answered by thought. You've tried. The mind builds layers of identity roles, history, opinion, memory, but none of these truly settle the question. They describe the surface, but not the source. When you stay with the question without rushing past it, something shifts. You begin to sense the quiet underneath the self. Not a conclusion, but a vastness. This is the purpose of the koanot, to give you something new to believe, but to take away what you thought you knew, to show you the limits of language, of analysis, of strategy. You meet the edge of mind, and instead of resisting, you relax into it. The mystery becomes not a threat, but a refuge. Other koans ask, "What is this?" pointing not to a thing, but to the experience of the moment. This breath, this sensation, this sound, you're not asked to define it, only to meet it, to sit with it without labeling, without turning it into something. The practice is not in the thinking, but in the looking. It's in the way the question draws your attention back to now, over and over again. Mystery becomes a path to presence because it breaks the habit of control. The mind wants certainty. It wants closure. It wants to know what's coming. But reality doesn't obey that desire. Life keeps changing. The self keeps shifting. The ground keeps moving. When you meet life as a koan, you begin to work with this movement rather than against it. Letting the world be a koan means living without needing everything to make sense. It means allowing space for confusion, wonder, ambiguity. These are not things to escape. They are part of your experience. They teach patience. They deepen humility. There is a softness that grows when you stop needing answers. You stop forcing things to resolve. You start listening more carefully. You begin to sense meaning, not in explanation, but in attention. Not in the conclusion, but in the way you stay with the question. This does not mean becoming passive. It means becoming present. It means showing up without armor, without needing to appear like you've figured everything out. You live honestly inside, not knowing. You move from curiosity rather than certainty. Koans are not always formal. Life offers them every day. A moment of loss, a moment of silence, a change you didn't expect, a longing you can't explain. Instead of demanding clarity, you pause. You breathe. You stay with the discomfort, not to fix it, but to learn from it. This builds inner spaciousness. You stop collapsing around problems. You allow them to live for a while without rushing them out. The same way a fire needs space to breathe, questions need space to unfold. They don't always burn clean. Some smolder for years. That's okay. Their presence shapes you. You also begin to see the difference between mental inquiry and direct experience. Mental inquiry stays in loops. It circles, debates, analyzes. Direct experience opens. It includes sensation, breath, silence, emotion. When you meet a koan with the body, not just the mind, it touches something deeper. It changes how you hold your life. Letting mystery become mindfulness means releasing the need to be the one who always knows. It means welcoming surprise. It means no longer fearing what you don't understand. This creates a different kind of confidence, the kind built on answers, but the kind built on presence. You become less interested in proving and more interested in perceiving. You begin to hear what's under the words. You notice what's beneath the surface of moments. You trust your capacity to stay, even when you don't know what comes next. This kind of attention changes your relationship with discomfort. When pain arises, you don't immediately try to escape it. You meet it with curiosity. What is this? Becomes your anchor. Not to dissect, but to witness. Even suffering becomes a teacher when you don't run from it. Mystery teaches you how to soften, not because everything is resolved, but because you stop expecting it to be. You stop resisting what can't be forced. You stop demanding closure before you're ready. This creates a deep kind of peace, the kind that's not dependent on knowing how things will turn out. You begin to live more from the senses, more from presence. The world becomes less a thing to figure out and more a field to enter. You walk with awareness, you breathe with care. You meet people with less projection, you stay open. Even spiritual questions become less about reaching some final answer and more about being reshaped by the asking. You notice how different you feel when you ask sincerely, without trying to control the outcome. You learn to rest in that space. You stop trying to grasp the truth. You start to let it unfold through experience, through small insights, through moments of stillness, through everyday life. This doesn't mean you give up critical thinking. It means you see its limits. You use the mind when it serves, and you rest in presence when it doesn't. You let thought be a tool, not a master. Koans are not about solving anything. They are about dissolving the barriers between you and the moment. They open a kind of seeing that is not stuck in separation. You don't need to arrive anywhere. You begin to sense you were never really separate from what you were seeking. Living this way doesn't require special knowledge. It requires attention, willingness, a quiet heart. You can meet mystery in a sip of tea, in a glance, in a question that echoes without resolution. You don't have to answer, "Who am I?" You can live the question, feel its presence in your breath, in your speech, in the way you meet others. You don't have to define it. You only have to meet it with honesty. Let the world remain a little uncertain. Let each day carry a little unknown. Not because you gave up on clarity, but because you discovered something more powerful than explanation. Let each question deepen your attention. Let each moment pull you closer to now. Let each pause become a space where truth can rise not from thought, but from presence. Sitting with a question you cannot answer softens the mind's need to organize everything into neat categories. When you stop forcing clarity and start listening to mystery, awareness stretches beyond logic. This quiet, wordless space allows you to see how much of your experience is shaped not by reality, but by language. The moment something is named, it's no longer raw. It becomes a concept, filtered through memory, expectation, and belief. Practicing presence without language means learning to see before the mind calls something by its name. It means meeting the world directly, through the senses, before thinking steps in to organize, define, and interpret. This is not a rejection of thought. It's a return to what comes before thought. When you let go of naming, you begin to see that much of what you call reality is actually a mental map layered on top of perception. You hear a sound and label it. You feel a sensation and describe it. You see a person and instantly associate them with a role, a memory, an assumption. But what happens when you pause before the label? What remains when you strip away the word? What's left is the raw texture of experience, the vibration of sound, the movement of color, the temperature of emotion. These are not ideas. They are not conclusions. They are simply what is. When you rest in this space, you begin to feel more alive, not because something dramatic is happening, but because you are finally meeting life without the filter of labels. This practice is subtle but profound. You begin to notice how language rushes in, trying to control. When a feeling arises, the mind wants to name it sadness, frustration, boredom. But these names often carry stories. They shape how you hold the experience. When you release the name, you meet the sensation as it is: heavy, tight, warm, moving, pulsing. No longer a concept, just sensation unfolding in real time. Letting go of labels doesn't mean losing awareness. It means refining it. It means being so close to the experience that the need to describe it dissolves. This closeness is intimate. It brings you into direct contact with your moment-to-moment experience in a way that thinking never can. The same is true with sight. You look at something, and the mind immediately defines it, to cup, a tree, a chair. But without the word, there's only shape, light, shadow, edge. The eye receives a world far more alive than the one the mind repeats to itself. This way of seeing breaks the habit of living through memory. You stop relating to things based on your last encounter with them. You stop seeing people as characters in your internal narrative. You begin to meet everything freshly, not as an idea, but as a living event. This creates openness. The world is no longer made of fixed objects and roles. It's made of changing patterns of experience, each one new, each one unknowable until it's felt. When you stop naming, your attention becomes sharper, more still, not frozen, but clear. You no longer need to think about what you're experiencing. You're simply with it, fully. The thinking mind quiets, not because you're suppressing it, but because it's no longer needed. This is not about rejecting language entirely. Words are useful. They allow communication. They give form to ideas. But when it comes to presence, they can also become barriers. The word pain can become heavier than the actual sensation. The word love can become more complex than the feeling itself. Language adds layers, sometimes too many. Practicing presence without language also reveals how often thinking is a form of distance. Naming something creates a gap. You observe, then label, then react to the label. But when you skip the label, you stay with the thing itself. This closeness brings intimacy. It also brings honesty. You can't lie to yourself when you're with direct experience. This practice can begin anywhere: sitting, walking, eating, washing your hands. Instead of saying, "This is warm water," feel the warmth. Instead of thinking, "This is my breath," feel the breath move through the body. Let your awareness return to what is here before the mind organizes it. Even emotions can be met in this way. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," notice what anxiety feels like without the word. Is it tightness, fluttering, restlessness? Is it located somewhere in the body, or is it more diffuse? When you explore the raw experience without labeling, the story loses its grip. This way of practicing also allows you to see how temporary everything is. Labels make things seem fixed, but direct experience is constantly changing. A sound fades, a feeling shifts, a sensation grows stronger, then disappears. When you stop freezing reality with words, you begin to live inside its movement. You may find silence more comforting. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of internal commentary. A spaciousness that arises when the inner voice quiets. This silence isn't empty. It's full of life, full of sensation, full of presence. This practice also brings humility. You realize how little you truly know when you're not relying on language. How much mystery lives in the most ordinary things. The way sunlight moves across a floor, the feeling of your own hands resting, the sound of footsteps nearby. When you stop naming, the world becomes vast again. Letting go of naming also softens judgment. Without labels, there is no good or bad sound, no beautiful or ugly sight, no right or wrong feeling. There is only experience. This doesn't make you numb. It makes you free. You still care, you still feel, but you're no longer reacting to your own commentary. This freedom changes how you relate to others. You stop labeling people so quickly. You meet them as they are, not as who you think they are. You listen more closely. You speak more clearly. You connect beyond roles. This isn't detachment, it's deeper connection. It's attention that doesn't reduce or limit. It's awareness that stays open. You can carry this practice into daily life. When you eat, notice the taste before calling it sweet or salty. When you walk, feel the steps without narrating them. When you listen, hear the tone before interpreting the meaning. These moments build presence. They build clarity. Over time, your relationship with thought itself changes. You stop being afraid of silence. You stop needing to think in order to feel alive. You begin to trust perception. You trust being. Let yourself see before you speak. Let yourself feel before you explain. Let yourself hear before you define. Let each moment arrive without the weight of labels. Let presence speak without words. When you stop naming experience, the world becomes still. Words fall away, and what's left is raw, direct contact. This is not absence, it is a new kind of presence, a fuller one. Without labels, perception deepens. You are no longer describing the moment, you are inside it. And in this new space, something even quieter becomes visible. Know what you're looking at, not what you're thinking about, but what exists before and between your thoughts. The breath is still moving, awareness is still present, but something else is opening the gap. The mind rarely pays attention to the space between thoughts. It follows one idea after another, one image, one sentence, always chasing content. The pause is ignored, skipped over, filled instantly with the next thought. But if you begin to notice the space itself, the quiet between the noise, your awareness deepens into something far more subtle and transformative. This space is not empty in the way the mind might expect. It's not a void, and it's not blankness. It is alive with stillness. It holds awareness without effort. It is what allows thought to come and go. It is the background that has never left, no matter how loud the mental activity becomes. Contemplating this space is not about stopping thought. You don't force silence. You notice the natural rhythm of minderizing, pausing, fading, and, instead of clinging to the content, you rest your attention on the pause. It might be brief, it might be subtle, but it's there, always waiting to be seen. The breath can be your guide in this, because while thoughts move unpredictably, the breath remains steady. Between the inhale and the exhale, and again between the exhale and the next inhale, there is a still point. It doesn't last long, but in that pause, something shifts. The body is not doing. The mind is not busy, and presence has no effort. This is not the breath as a focus, it's the breath as a doorway. You begin to sense that awareness is most clear when it's not clinging to anything, not a word, not an emotion, not a memory. The gap between thoughts is not a distraction from life, it is life without commentary. It's the part of experience that's always overlooked because it doesn't call attention to itself. It doesn't feel like stimulation, but the longer you rest in it, the more it reveals its depth. It teaches you patience. In that pause, there is no rush, no urgency. There is only being. The mind isn't pulling you into the future or replaying the past. The nervous system relaxes, the body softens, and you feel what it means to be here without needing anything else. The breath between thoughts shows you that awareness doesn't need content to exist. You don't need to think to know that you are. You don't need to label to feel. You don't need to chase clarity to experience peace. The mind tries to fill every space, but the most profound realizations often come not from thinking more, but from pausing long enough to notice what already is. The more you stay with this pause, the more the mind's patterns become visible. You start to see how quickly it jumps, how uncomfortable it is with stillness, how it fills silence with planning, remembering, predicting, not because those thoughts are bad, but because they've become habitual, automatic, and the pause interrupts that automation. This interruption is where freedom lives, not because it erases thoughts, but because it reveals that you are not those thoughts. They pass, you stay. The gap shows you that awareness doesn't begin and end with each mental event. It flows through them, but it's not made of them. You also begin to see that the gap is not something to grasp. The moment you try to hold it, it disappears. This teaches you subtle letting go. You can't possess presence. You can only return to it. You can only fall into it gently, like settling into the quiet under the noise. Resting in the pause also loosens identification with story. Without the constant narration, you begin to feel what it's like to just be without defining yourself, without comparing, without performing. This presence is not dull. It's deeply alive, more awake than any thought, because it's not filtered. It doesn't require belief. In the space between thoughts, self-consciousness falls away. There's no need to reflect on how you appear. There's no narrative being rehearsed. There's just experience, direct, immediate, fresh. This clarity changes how you respond to the world. When you can rest in stillness, your reactions become slower. You respond rather than reflexively act. You listen more carefully. You speak with more intention. The pause becomes part of your rhythm. It doesn't have to be long. Even one breath, one small moment of silence before the next thought can bring you back to this grounded awareness. And over time, this practice shifts your baseline. You spend less time lost in thought, more time resting in presence. Thought still comes, but it no longer defines you. You also begin to appreciate the beauty of small things, because without mental noise, attention becomes more refined. A single sound, a brief glance, the warmth of your hands, the rhythm of walking. These moments are no longer background. They're part of the richness that silence makes visible. This practice also reveals how presence doesn't need to be achieved. It's not a goal, it's what remains when striving stops. The breath keeps moving, the heart keeps beating, and the awareness behind it all remains steady, whether thoughts are loud or silent. Even in difficult moments, the space is there, not to escape pain, but to hold it, to be with it in a way that doesn't add layers. You see that pain comes and goes, but the stillness underneath is not broken. It's not overwhelmed. It stays. This insight brings trust. Trust in experience, trust in presence, trust in the knowing that isn't dependent on thinking. You don't have to control everything. You don't have to solve every problem immediately. You can rest in the pause and let clarity arise naturally. Over time, the pause teaches you a new relationship with time. You're no longer measuring every second. You're not rushing to get to the next task. You're not consumed by what's next. You're here, not floating, but grounded, not spacing out, but tuning in. This grounded awareness is not distant. It's intimate. It includes everything: sound, sensation, thought, silence. But it clings to nothing. It doesn't pick favorites. It just notices. And in that noticing, peace becomes less a feeling and more a way of being. The breath between thoughts is your access point. It's the reminder that you're not the storm. You're the sky it moves through. You're not the voice. You're the silence behind it. You're not the story. You're the presence reading it. Let yourself rest in that. Let the space hold you. No need to explain it. No need to define it. Just return. And stay. The breath between thoughts leads you to the edge of identity, not as something dramatic, but as a quiet moment where nothing is being held. In that stillness, there's no story being told, no role being played, no definition being clung to. It's just awareness, alive and present. You don't disappear in this space, you become more honest. Without the mask, without the name, without the job to do, something opens, something real. In everyday life, so much energy goes into holding roles. You step into identities because they feel necessary. You're a parent, a worker, a partner, a teacher, a helper. These roles shape how you speak, how you move, how you think. They provide structure, but over time, they can become rigid. What began as expression becomes performance. What began as connection becomes pressure. The identity starts to speak louder than the person underneath it. Releasing roles doesn't mean rejecting responsibility. It doesn't mean abandoning commitments. It means not mistaking the role for the self. It means recognizing when your attention is being consumed by an image you feel you must maintain. When your presence becomes conditional on being seen a certain way, this awareness is subtle. It begins by noticing the tension that builds when you're trying to be a version of yourself. It might show up as tightness in the chest before a meeting, or hesitation before saying something honest. You might feel pressure to appear competent, nurturing, creative, wise. And while there's nothing wrong with embodying these qualities, suffering begins when they stop being expressions and start being requirements. Roles serve a function, but they're not the source of your being. They're clothing, not skin. They're stories, not essence. Mindfulness helps you step back, not to escape your life, but to live it more freely. When you see the role, you stop being controlled by it. You begin to act with presence, not performance. This shift doesn't have to be dramatic. It happens in small moments, speaking honestly rather than strategically, listening without the need to fix, moving through the day without carrying the weight of how you're supposed to appear. These moments return you to what's underneath, the part of you that simply is. In relationships, this is especially important. Roles can shape how you show up. You become the strong one, the dependable one, the quiet one, the one who holds everything together. But what if that image no longer serves you? What if it's costing you authenticity? Letting go of roles allows more honesty to enter your connections. You stop managing perception and start allowing presence. You become more curious, more open, more real. You don't need to prove anything. You just meet each moment with what's true now, not what was true yesterday or what's expected tomorrow. This openness creates intimacy. It removes the layers of identity that often block connection. You don't have to be impressive or wise or put together. You just have to be here. And in that space, others feel more free too. They no longer have to keep up their roles around you. You give them permission by your own presence to drop the mask. In solitude, this practice becomes even more powerful. When no one is watching, who are you? When there's nothing to perform, what remains? These questions are not about answers. They're about attention. They invite you to explore the quiet presence that doesn't need definition. Often, people seek identity to feel secure, to know who they are in a world of change. But this kind of security is fragile. It's based on things that can shift: job titles, family roles, artistic labels, achievements. When those things change, the self can feel lost. But mindfulness shows you that there is something steady beneath all those layers, a presence that doesn't need to be named. This doesn't mean becoming no one. It means becoming fully present with whatever is arising, without needing to filter it through a fixed image. It means being soft enough to change, open enough to listen, honest enough to admit you don't always know. Letting go of roles also allows more creativity. When you're not boxed in by identity, you begin to move with more freedom. You try things without needing to be good at them. You speak without rehearsing. You create without worrying if it fits the image you've built. This freedom brings joy. Not because you're escaping responsibility, but because you're reconnecting with expression that comes from the present, not from pressure. This practice also brings lightness to moments of failure. When you're not clinging to identity, you don't have to defend mistakes. You don't have to protect an image. You can say, "That didn't work," and move on. You don't collapse into shame because your sense of self isn't tied to constant performance. It also brings peace to moments of success. You enjoy the experience without needing to cling to it. You know that roles will shift, praise will pass, and titles will fade, but presence remains. You're not grasping to be someone. You're resting in being. The more you return to this presence, the less you fear change. You don't need the world to reflect a fixed version of you. You don't need others to affirm your role. You're not trying to be seen in a certain way. You're showing up to each moment with a clear heart. This doesn't mean you lose passion or purpose. In fact, it refines them. When you're not doing things to protect a role, your actions become cleaner. You write because it moves you. You help because it feels right. You lead because it's needed. You stop confusing expression with identity. You begin to live with more honesty. You let yourself feel what you feel without editing. You stop pushing away the parts of yourself that don't fit the role. You begin to include everything: uncertainty, doubt, joy, silence. This inclusiveness becomes strength. It creates a sense of wholeness. You don't have to split yourself into parts. You don't have to carry the burden of being one thing all the time. You allow yourself to be human. Letting go of identity tags doesn't remove you from the world. It returns you to it more deeply. You engage not as a role, but as presence. You speak not as a character, but as awareness. You relate not through labels, but through being. This is not about erasing who you are. It's about seeing what's real beneath what's assumed. It's about loosening the grip of performance so that truth can breathe. Let yourself meet this moment without needing to be anything. Let yourself be enough without the role. Let yourself rest in what doesn't change when all the names fall away. When roles are released and the need to be someone softens, presence becomes simpler, not smaller, but more true. You start to meet the moment without effort, without the heavy filter of performance. And in this openness, awareness becomes sensitive to details you may have overlooked. What once felt ordinary now reveals texture, tone, and tension. Even the way your body interacts with the world becomes a mirror for your state of mind, not in concept, but in contact. The way you touch things tells a story, one worth listening to. Start with something as simple as holding a cup. The fingers wrap around the handle, the palm supports its weight, the wrist adjusts its balance. This moment, too, is a practice. It's not about perfection. It's about the quality of attention you bring to the act. Are you gripping tightly without knowing? Is there a slight rush in your movement? Are you present with the temperature, the texture, the shape? These are not small details. They reveal how the body meets the world and, by extension, how the mind moves through life. When you grasp, you tell the nervous system to prepare for threat. When you soften, you give it space to trust. Your gestures speak long before your words, and often they are more honest. Mindfulness in touch is not restricted to formal meditation. It lives in each small action. The way you close a door, the way you wash your hands, the way you place a spoon back on the table. Each moment offers feedback, not to judge, but to see. Are you rushing? Are you controlling? Are you allowing? Touch can be grounding or reactive. It can be an anchor or an unconscious habit. When you begin to pay attention, you start to feel where your contact with the world holds tension. That tension isn't wrong. It's a signal. It tells you where the body is bracing, where the mind is anticipating, where presence has given way to outcome. There's a deep teaching in loosening your grip physically and mentally. You don't lose control, you gain clarity. When the hands relax, the breath follows. When grasping stops, awareness expands. This doesn't mean dropping everything or moving in slow motion. It means moving with enough presence that each action becomes intentional. Even mundane tasks shift when approached this way. Carrying a bag, opening a drawer, tying a shoe. These are not breaks from mindfulness. They are invitations. The ordinary becomes sacred not through ritual, but through attention. And that attention can be trained through touch. Holding a cup of tea, you can feel the warmth through your skin. You can notice the pressure in your fingers. You can sense if you're gripping or resting. That single moment contains the whole practice: awareness, contact, balance, care. You are not just holding tea. You are meeting reality as it is through the body, with the mind awake. Non-grasping doesn't mean disconnection. It means intimacy without control. You touch gently because nothing needs to be possessed. Nothing needs to be held too tightly. This is not passive, it's deeply engaged. It respects the object, the space, the moment, and it respects the self. In relationships, this quality of touch matters too. Not just physical touch, but the way you reach for others with your presence. Are you grasping for attention, for reassurance, for approval? Or are you allowing connection to arise without force? The body reveals this long before words do. A soft hand, a patient pause, an openness in posture. These communicate more than scripted conversation ever could. Letting go in touch also teaches trust. You stop needing to control every interaction. You stop fearing that something will be lost if you don't hold tightly. You begin to see that most things remain when you stop clinging, and what doesn't was never meant to be held. This practice brings you into a more honest relationship with effort. You begin to feel the difference between doing and overdoing, between holding and gripping, between offering and demanding. The body becomes your teacher. The feedback is immediate, if you listen. Touch also reveals your patterns of protection. Many people unconsciously harden around the chest, jaw, or hands, not because they're aware of danger, but because the body has learned to brace. These habits go unnoticed until attention returns. Once seen, they can soften, not instantly, but gradually, with breath, with care. The more you bring mindfulness to touch, the more the nervous system learns safety. It begins to trust the present moment. You are no longer preparing to flee, to prove, to perfect. You are simply meeting what is here, one gesture at a time. Even eating becomes different. The way you hold a fork, the way you set the bowl down, the way you chew. These moments carry messages. If you slow down enough, you can hear them, not as thoughts, but as tone, as rhythm, as feeling. Touch is the language of now. It doesn't refer to memory or plan for future. It doesn't need narrative. It only asks for presence. And when you give it that, it gives something back: connection. You stop floating above life and begin to live in it, through it, with it. You may notice that softening your grip brings more enjoyment. The tea tastes better. The breeze feels cooler. The steps feel steadier. This is not about avoiding the hard parts. It's about meeting them with a body that's not already clenched. Non-grasping in touch is also about boundaries. You can feel when a gesture is respectful, when it honors space. This awareness prevents harm. It makes room for consent, for listening, for mutual presence. It teaches you to feel not just what you want, but what is right in the moment. It also reveals when you are absent, when your hands move automatically, when you forget what you just did. These gaps in presence are not failures, they're reminders. Each one is a bell inviting you back. Let your hand on the doorknob be enough. Let your fingers in the warm water be enough. Let your body's contact with the earth be enough. There's no rush. There's no test. Let your gestures teach you what your mind often misses, that peace is not something you think into being. It is something you touch with care. And care begins now, with how you lift, with how you place, with how you meet the world through your hands, not to take but to allow. Letting go through touch shows you how much you've been holding without even noticing. The hands soften, the breath slows, and suddenly something beneath the surface begins to speak. Not through words, but through feeling. Beneath the ease of a gentle grip or the care in placing something down, there are deeper layers: memories, reactions, stories, The body remembers even when the mind forgets. And in these moments of soft presence, old discomforts may start to rise, not to hurt you, but to be seen. This is the next invitation of the practice. Sitting with what's difficult, not solving it, not avoiding it, not judging it. Simply staying, letting what has been hidden become visible. Noticing the discomfort without collapsing into it. This is not easy, but it is the path toward integration, toward wholeness. Mindfulness is not just a tool for peaceful moments. It's a refuge when the inner world feels stormy. When memories, emotions, or truths you'd rather avoid begin to surface, mindfulness becomes the ground beneath your feet. You don't push the shadow away, you make space for it. You stay with the sensation without adding more pain to it. The body often remembers what the mind has tried to bury: old fears, grief, shame, regret. These are not weaknesses, they are parts of the self that never had a chance to be held with care. When they arise, the mind's first impulse is usually to escape, to distract, suppress, or argue. But each time you resist the urge to run and choose instead to stay, you begin to reclaim your inner life. Sitting with shadows means noticing when discomfort arises in the body: tightness in the chest, a lump in the throat, heat in the face, and meeting it with breath. Not trying to make it disappear, but simply being present with it, naming it gently: tension, sadness, fear, without turning it into a story. The moment you stop running from the sensation, it begins to shift. This shift is not always immediate. Sometimes the discomfort grows stronger before it begins to settle. This is natural. The body and mind are learning that it is safe to feel, that you can be present with pain without being consumed by it, that not everything difficult needs to be fixed. Some things just need to be witnessed. The practice is not about forcing resolution, it's about creating space for truth. When you sit with what's hard, you may begin to see things more clearly. Patterns you couldn't understand before start to make sense. Old emotions reveal their roots. You realize that what seemed overwhelming was often the fear of feeling, not the feeling itself. This presence becomes a form of alchemy. You are not erasing the past, you are integrating it, bringing it into awareness, into the light of compassion. You begin to hold parts of yourself that were left behind, parts that were judged, silenced, or hidden. You stop trying to push certain emotions out of your experience. You let them have their place without letting them take over. This balance is powerful. It gives you access to strength that isn't loud but steady, a strength rooted in honesty. The mind may want to know how long this will take, when the discomfort will pass, when the clarity will come. But mindfulness teaches you to stay with the process without rushing. Each time you sit with what's painful, without needing to fix it, you build resilience, not through hardness, but through openness. You also begin to see that emotions are not enemies. Even the difficult ones have messages. Anger might be pointing to a boundary that was crossed. Sadness may be asking for rest. Fear might be revealing an area of growth. When you listen without resistance, these emotions start to soften. They stop yelling because they know they're being heard. Sitting with shadows also changes your relationship with memory. You begin to revisit the past, not to relive it, but to meet it with the awareness you have now. You offer your younger self the presence they never had. This act alone can be deeply healing, not because the past changes, but because your relationship to it does. You stop carrying unprocessed emotions into every new experience. You stop projecting old pain onto current relationships. You begin to respond to life as it is, not as you fear it will be. This practice is not always comfortable, but it is always clarifying. It reveals your capacity to hold more than you thought. It reminds you that feeling deeply is not a flaw, it's a doorway, one that opens only when you stop trying to shut it. It's important to approach this work with care, Going too deep too fast can overwhelm the system. That's why mindfulness invites you to move slowly, to notice the edge of your comfort and meet it with breath. If you feel yourself becoming numb or lost, return to the body, to sensation, to the present moment. You can also use grounding tools. Feel your feet on the floor, place your hand on your chest, speak gently to yourself. This is not about endurance, it's about presence. About showing your nervous system that it is safe to feel, that you are not alone in the experience. In time, sitting with discomfort becomes less frightening. You begin to trust that emotions pass, that pain shifts, that truth can be held without needing to collapse around it. You become less reactive in everyday life because you've practiced staying with yourself when it's hardest. This creates space for compassion not only for yourself, but for others. You understand more clearly what people are carrying. You see their reactions as possible signs of their own unprocessed pain. This doesn't mean accepting harm. It means responding with clarity rather than judgment. The more you practice sitting with the shadows, the less you fear them. You begin to realize that what once overwhelmed you no longer controls you. You are building a relationship with yourself that is rooted in truth, not avoidance. And that relationship becomes a foundation for everything else. You move through the world with less armor. You connect more honestly. You listen more deeply. You live less from fear and more from alignment. Let the discomfort arise. Let the memories surface. Let the truth speak, not to hurt, but to free. And stay. You don't have to know what to do. You only have to remain. Sitting with discomfort teaches you something unexpected. You begin to feel how the body carries truth even before the mind is ready to admit it. The tightness, the stillness, the tremble, these are not accidents. They are signs. The body remembers, responds, speaks. And once you learn to stay with these signals during difficulty, you also learn to stay with them in ordinary life. You begin to notice that your body is always communicating, even in the smallest movements. This is where mindfulness deepens, not in dramatic stillness, but in the simple, often ignored micro-gestures, the shift of your posture, the scratch of your cheek, the blink between thoughts. These are not interruptions. They are the practice. They are how presence stays alive in motion. Mindfulness of movement is not about control. It's not about slowing everything down into a ritual. It's about becoming sensitive to what is already happening. To bring awareness not only to where your body is, but to how it moves. You start to observe yourself as if you were watching a quiet dance, unfold, blinking, swallowing, adjusting your sleeve, shifting in your seat. These movements seem small, but they hold power. Every motion carries a quality, a mood, an intention, a momentum. The way you turn your head can be sharp or soft. The way you reach for a glass can be rushed or grounded. When you bring attention to these small actions, you reveal what you were feeling before it became thought. Most people are so used to their patterns of movement that they no longer notice them. Hands always fidgeting, shoulders always tight, eyes darting from one thing to the next. These habits don't just reflect restlessness, they reinforce it. But awareness interrupts the loop. When you notice the motion, you're no longer being moved by it. You are choosing. And in that choice, presence deepens. You begin to participate in your body, not just live inside it. The space between doing and being gets smaller. You're no longer lost in your head while your body follows along. You return to embodiment, to the felt sense of now. Micro-gestures can also reveal unconscious emotions. The clenching of a jaw may show unresolved frustration. The shifting of feet could point to unease. A repeated cough might hold anxiety. By noticing these signals, you give the body a voice. You begin to meet yourself where words don't reach. This awareness is not judgmental. You don't watch your movements to correct them. You watch them to understand, to feel the truth of your inner world reflected in how you move through space. This kind of observation creates kindness. It brings softness. You stop pushing the body to behave. You begin to listen. Simple movements like blinking, swallowing, or stretching can become anchors for mindfulness. Each one is a chance to return. Not dramatically, just gently. Instead of chasing the next task, you notice the blink. You return to the body. You arrive again. These returns are not interruptions to your day. They are the foundation of your attention. They prevent disconnection from building up. Instead of needing a crisis to bring you back, these small pauses become regular touches of presence. A blink becomes a bell. A shift becomes a breath. This practice doesn't require you to pause your life. It moves with you. As you stand, sit, turn, type, awareness follows. You are not waiting for stillness to be mindful. You are moving with clarity. You are reclaiming the body as a place of awareness, not a tool for doing. Mindfulness of movement also teaches you humility. You begin to see how often you move from habit, how many actions are performed automatically. There's nothing wrong with this. But when you notice it, you see how much of your life is spent in unconscious repetition. Awareness changes that, not by controlling every move, but by bringing light to each one. Letting movement become part of your practice also reveals timing. You start to sense when a gesture is rushed, when you are ahead of yourself, when the hand reaches before the heart is ready. You learn to wait, not as delay, but as respect for presence. Each motion becomes honest. You may begin to notice how posture changes mood. When you sit slumped, your energy dips. When you lift the spine, clarity returns. This is not about formality, it's about alignment, not in appearance, but in experience. Micro-movements also reflect how you relate to others. The nod of the head, the crossing of arms, the touch of the hand, these carry messages, often louder than words. When you become mindful of your own body, you begin to notice these cues in others too. You listen with your eyes. You connect with your presence. This creates real communication, not just of thoughts, but of states, of honesty, of care. You begin to notice when someone's smile doesn't reach their shoulders, when their words don't match their pace. You respond not just to what they say, but to how they are. Mindfulness of movement is not a separate practice. It weaves into everything. As you drink water, as you reach for the light, as you shift your weight while listening, each one is a point of contact between the mind and body. Each one is a choice, to rush or to return. This returning builds steadiness. It teaches your nervous system that it doesn't have to live in fight or flight, that you can move with calm, that presence can be physical, not just mental. Letting every gesture become a practice also reveals beauty. Not the beauty of appearance, but of awareness, of presence lived through form. You begin to move, not like someone chasing time, but like someone meeting it. The way you hold a pen, the way you step into a room, the way you open your hand. These are not background, these are moments. And when you meet them fully, they meet you back. Let your movement be honest. Let it be felt. Let it bring you home. You've walked with the breath. You've listened to the sound of now. You've touched the present with softened hands and rested in the space between thoughts. One lesson at a time, the moment has opened itself to you not as an idea, but as a living teacher. Each topic you explored was never just about information. It was about returning. Returning to stillness, to awareness, to the unshakable presence that was here before your worries, before your roles, before the mind named anything. The Buddha didn't ask us to change the world, he invited us to wake up inside it. And you've done that here, softly, steadily, moment by moment. As you drift into sleep, know this. Peace isn't waiting for you tomorrow. It's not hidden in the future. It's here, in the breath, in the silence, in the gentle weight of your body resting now. If one of these teachings touched you, leave a comment below and share what stayed with you. Which moment brought you home? What truth whispered loudest? Your reflection may be the reminder someone else needs tonight. And if you'd like more journeys like this, deep, mindful, and real, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Let's keep waking up together.